Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was known as a fairy guardian. In the past, he's a man known by many names: the Demon Brat, the hero of the Fourth Great Shinobi War, the Nanaidaime Hokage of the Leaf. Now, he is known as fairy tale's very own guardian angel, an urban legend of the world of magic, who goes by the name of Fairy Guardian. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard! Chapter 8. Why not? Mira Jane Strauss whined playfully when Naruto gave her a very straightforward answer to her question, something that he had been given to anyone that asked him or requested him something he didn't like. No. Because. Naruto crossed his arms on his chest and looked at the white-haired demon, who was pouting with her hands on her hips. I only have one bedroom. I don't have a spare room for anyone, and I can't let any of you girls sleep on the couch, and quite frankly, I don't want to sleep there either, so yeah, you can't sleep at my house tonight, sorry. He answered blankly before pointing his finger eastward. There is a town a mile from here, you guys can find some good hotels there to stay the night. Mira opened her mouth to talk, but Naruto beat her to it. And don't expect me to take you there, it's not like you cannot find a town in the middle of the night, right? He smirked. Normally, as a gentleman, it's my duty to escort a young and beautiful girl like you to that town in the middle of the night, Naruto stated, causing Mira to giggle. But the problem is I don't want to. Mira had the urge to facepalm, but she had expected him to say something like that. How charming of him. Damn, you're no fun at all. Kana groaned, gulping down the last bottle of wine before sighing longingly in satisfaction. But damn, you have some amazing wines in there. What is this? Can I have another one, please? She looked drunk, but obviously not drunk enough to knock herself out. It is sake. People don't usually make that kind of drink nowadays. Naruto answered. How did Kana find and take that bottle from where he hid? It was totally beyond him. And no, you can't. I want to keep the rest for myself, thank you very much. The immortal shinobi deadpanned, causing Kana to groan in disappointment. The card mage turned around and walked away. Well, we better get going then. She told the rest of the team, who nodded their heads in response before they quickly followed her. Are you coming, Mirane? Lisana asked loudly when she noticed her sister was still standing in front of Naruto. I will, just a second. Mira called back, before turning back to look at Naruto. Well, I guess I will see you tomorrow morning then. Don't look forward to it. The blonde shook his head. I might not be around when you come tomorrow. Still, a girl can hope, right? The beautiful supermodel winked before smiling beautifully. Thank you for spending your time training with us today, Naruto-kun. You don't have to mention it. Naruto smiled. I only did it because I didn't have anything to do today. Reason all you want, Naruto-kun. You might have a tough front, but I can see right through you. Mira giggled, causing Naruto to roll his eyes. As if she could do something like that. Well, it's getting late. I think I'd better get going then. So, stay safe and do not wander around. You don't want to know what is stalking you in the middle of the night. You really should remove that stick from your ass, you know? Mira teased back, causing Naruto to glare at her. The others are waiting for you over there, aren't they? Naruto asked, gesturing his hand toward her teammate. Indeed, they are. Mira nodded before raising her hand to wave good night, Naruto-kun. Hopefully, I won't get to train with you tomorrow. She winked, giving him a meaningful look before walking away. You too, Mira. Naruto nodded, giving her a small wave and waited until Mira and the others had completely disappeared into the night to return to his house. He made sure to lock the door with a normal lock and a couple of magical barriers to make sure that no one would be able to disturb him and his night. Removing his shirt and then his pants, Naruto silently made his way to the bathroom, which was occupied by a certain Itharias who had returned that afternoon but probably didn't want to disturb him while he was training with Mira and her teammates in the forest. Perfect timing, he could only think with a sly smirk when he saw his most favorite she-devil in the world standing in his bathroom, naked, bathing under the shower while facing away from him with soap on her flawless skin. No matter how many times he had seen it and how many years had it been, Sila's voluptuous figure was a sight that had always caused his pants to become several sizes too small. He had always wondered how Zeref could create someone like Sila. He had never appeared to be that kind of guy to him unless he secretly had a perverted mind, which he doubted he had. After taking a few seconds to admire her amazing backside, Naruto decided to make himself known, by opening the washing machine's lid and threw his dirty clothes inside. The sound, of course, startled her and immediately the Aetherius spun around. But when she realized it was him, Sila dropped her guard and quickly bowed her head to him, like she had always done to greet him. Welcome back, master.
Yeah, I'm back. Naruto grinned. Did I startle you?
Yes, master.
I couldn't feel your presence at all. Sila admitted truthfully because there was no reason for her to lie.
Not that she could or wanted to when it was her master. Stealth was one of his best skills. If he wanted to, not even someone with the magic to hear a person's soul and thoughts could know he was right behind them.
Do you mind if I join you?
The blonde asked casually, but he had already known the answer. Of course, help yourself, master. With the permission given, Naruto stripped himself from his boxer, threw his last piece of clothing into the washing machine and walked into the shower. Grinning from ear to ear, Naruto grabbed his demon lover by her hip and pulled her toward him for a searing kiss, which she happily returned with just as much passion, wrapping her arms possessively around his neck. Moving his hands down even further, Naruto took hold of her ass cheeks and pulled her even closer to him.
Master!
She moaned as their lips separated, but their tongues had no intention to do the same. Sila rolled her hips and pressed her large chest firmly against his muscular chest. After he had given her another kiss, and a playful slap on her right ass cheek, Naruto pulled back and smiled at her.
Miss me that much, huh? He teased and Sila only smiled in return. How was your day, master? Sila asked. She was afraid that he might get bored without her around to entertain him and keep him company. Who were the people you were spending your time with?
You saw us. It wasn't a question since he had already known that she had been there, looking for him while he was training with Mira and the others. She returned to his house shortly after that. Well, they are people from Fairy Tail.
They are here for training.
At first, they wanted to train at Mount Mayaboku, but I didn't let them, so they had to train at our training ground. Since I didn't have anything to do, I decided to train with them for a while. He then added, I guess we will have to avoid training at that place for a few months. Sila nodded her head in understanding and released him from her hold when he did. Turning around, the Aetherius took the bottle of shower gel and squeezed the lotion into the palm of her hand. It's time for her to perform her duty as his servant, in the best way possible.
One of them has demon power, hasn't she?
Turning the shower off, Sila put her hands on his chest and started spreading the gel on his body.
Yes, Mira can take over demons and use their powers.
Naruto answered with a nod of his head. I think she calls her magic takeover, Satan's soul.
Satan, so it's a lesser demon. You shouldn't underestimate her, Sila.
Satan might be a weak demon compares to you, but Mira has a lot of potentials to become as powerful as a top-tier Aetherius. He smiled as Sila's hands slid down his torso and the lower half of his body. Who knows, she might be able to take over you and your powers in the near future. I don't think it's possible, but I believe you, master. Sila looked at him as she had finally gotten her hand on his manhood. The immortal shinobi could already tell that she was going to spend her time there, which he didn't mind at all. The others are much weaker compares to her, it seems.
That's right. Naruto nodded, sighing in satisfaction when Sila gently stroked his cock while fondling his balls with her other hand. And the Dark Guilds consider them a thorn in their side. Unbelievable. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at that. No surprise when Sila said it with so much distastefulness.
Demons who were so powerful like her had never had much respect for human, especially their magic to begin with.
Well, there's a reason they are a force to be reckoned with.
They destroyed two of the most powerful Dark Guilds after all.
Naruto smiled.
Sila had finally removed her hands from his member, which was rock hard, and moved her hands down to his thighs and his legs. Anyway, enough about them and me.
How was your day, Scylla? Did the meeting go well?
I had a good day, master. Scylla smiled as she stood up and turned the shower on, allowing the water to wash the soap and lotion from her master's body, and the meeting went well.
Anything important?
Considering that they were the Dark Guild, whose members consisted of creations of a wizard who wanted to destroy the world, Naruto believed he should expect something like the end of the world.
Not really.
The demoness shook her head. We were just discussing Tartarus' future.
I think Mardgear-sama and Kyoka-sama are planning something big.
She then continued, much to his surprise, they're also planning to remove me from the Kyukimon. She must admit that she felt offended by their decision, but what they said next made that feeling disappear immediately. They said I would have more time with you and didn't have to concern about anything other than my inner desire.
Really? They are really doing something like that? Naruto asked in surprise.
Yes, because I have become a part-time member of the guild, and Tartarus has to be managed by the Kyukimon, 9 demon gates at any time.
Our goals are also different.
Scylla stopped her work for a moment to continue. I'm still being considered an active member of Tartarus, but I don't have to answer their call if I don't want to.
Well, I guess that means more time for the two of us.
The beautiful demon nodded her head with a smile. So, any idea who will take your place?
Not yet, master.
Scylla shook her head, but I hope Kyoka-sama will let me know, because I want to personally make sure that this demon is worthy enough to stand in my position.
Naruto nodded. Speaking of Kyoka, did she try to strip you with her eyes again?
He asked teasingly, causing Scylla to blush.
You unfortunate, yes she did, master. Scylla nodded.
Since she had reported everything, including Kyoka's flirting attempts to him every time she returned from Tartarus, Scylla had no reason to hide anything from him. We spent the morning talking in private, but she didn't try to use her curse on me like the last time. I swear, her ability to enhance physical sensations is annoying as hell. I mean, she can enhance your sense of pleasure so much a slight touch can make you come, can't she? Scylla nodded her head, having experienced that kind of enhancement many times for nearly 2 decades. Damn, talk about abusing your power. He raised his hand and cupped her right breast, causing Scylla to moan before continuing. However, it shows that she cannot please you as good as I do, and have to use her curse to make up for it.
He fondled Scylla's large breast, feeling its amazing weight and softness in the palm of his hand and fingers. Don't you agree?
I cannot agree more, master.
Scylla could only say between moan. Soon enough, Naruto was completely clean. There you go.
I hope you're pleased, master.
I am. Naruto grinned, putting his hand on the top of her head. You have already cleaned up, haven't you?
Scylla nodded her head in response. How unfortunate, because I'm planning to get you dirty all over again. Naruto reached out and turned the shower off while his hand on the top of her head gently pushed her down. Now be a good girl and get on your knee.
I would like to start with that pretty face and hair first. Warning, lemon sart.
Obediently, Scylla did what she was told and kneeled down in front of him, where she leaned forward and placed a kiss on his stiff shaft. Parting her lips and opened her mouth wide, Scylla raised her head and took the head of his cock into her mouth, sucking lightly while swirling her tongue around his glands. Feeling her master moving her hip to push more of his cock into her mouth, Scylla relaxed her throat and eagerly sucked on his member as Naruto slid his big and thick cock in and out of her mouth, slowly getting even deeper and deeper with each thrust forward. She gently squeezed his heavy nutsack, before sliding her own hands down her body, one stopping at her breast and the other at her pussy. Her fingers immediately went to work, pleasing herself while pleasing her master with her mouth. Naruto moaned, jerking his hips as her throat tightened around his cock. She was sucking him hard. Every glob of pre-cum was sucked down her throat the moment it oozed out from the tip of his cock. Every inch of his cock was coated in her saliva, which dripped down her chin, her large breast and the bathroom's wet floor every time he forcefully pulled his hips back. The sounds of thick meaty slabs soon filled the room as Naruto fucked her face with earnest, followed by her slurping noise as Scylla eagerly welcomed the thick invader. There were times Naruto was very close to coming but decided to savor the feeling. He pulled back and allowed Scylla to tend for his balls, with her mouth and tongue only, before going back to fuck her throat. It continued like that for several minutes before Naruto reached his limit. Shutting his eyes tight and feeling his balls clenched even tighter, Naruto buried his cock in her throat and came, spewing thick ropes of cum into her gut. He stayed like that for a few seconds before abruptly pulling his cock out of her mouth. With his grip on her head, Naruto tilted her head back and grabbed his cock, jerking his cock rapidly and started spraying his cum on her face, painting it white. Sayla moaned in delight as she felt his thick and hot sperm landed on her cheeks, lips, nose and forehead, slowly dripping down her body as he continued to unload what felt like an endless amount of cum on her face. Eventually, his cock gave the final throb and stopped coming. Grunting slightly in satisfaction, Naruto leant forward and put his cock back into Sayla, allowing her to suck and drink the remaining inside his cock before cleaning the thick shaft with her tongue. Pulling his cock out of her mouth, Naruto smirked as he looked down at her while she stared dreamingly up at him. "Told you, didn't I?" Naruto smirked as he rubbed his cock on her cum-cover face. "I'm going to get you dirty all over again, starting with your face and your hair." As his cock was soaked in his cum, Naruto once again inserted it into her mouth, allowing the sultry demoness to suck and clean it before pulling out, repeating the process for 2 more times before grabbing her by the arm and pulling Sayla to her feet. "Let's go somewhere else more comfortable, shall we?" Sayla gave no objection and followed her master into his bedroom, their bedroom, where he pushed her on the bed and climbed on top of her. Naruto kissed his lover again, his hands roamed over her voluptuous body. Taking holds of her bountiful breasts, he kissed his way down to her jaw and her neck, trailing his tongue on her smooth skin and lightly sucking along the way. Sayla leant her head back and bent her back upward, giving Naruto more access to her bust. With both hands squeezing her breasts, Naruto buried his face between her cleavage, enjoying the feeling of those soft pillows. After a moment, he took out his tongue and dragged it on her breasts, licking her nipples before taking one of them into his mouth, flicking and pinching the other with his other hand. Sayla could only moan as her master ravished her breasts, giving the attention they deserved. He continued like that for a while before allowing Sayla to pull him into another passionate kiss. As their tongue entangled between them, Naruto reached his hand down and took hold of his cock, positioning the tip at her entrance. Without further ado, he slammed his hip forward, parting her entrance and inserting nearly half of his cock into her fold. She released a throaty moan, but no sound came out because his mouth and tongue were keeping hers busy. Putting his hands on her thighs, Naruto spread her legs and pulled his hips backwards, dragging his cock almost out of her cunt before thrusting his hip forward, adding a good 2 inches inside her. He repeated the process over and over until he had gotten his entire big dick inside her pussy, the tip pushing against the entrance of her womb. Sayla melted into lust and pleasure as her master started fucking her, filling the room with wet smacking sound as Naruto moved his hips in a strong piston-like motion, slapping his pelvis against hers as if he was trying to break it. He didn't have to hold back, as Sayla's arousal kept her well lubricated, and being a demon, she was also much more durable than normal woman. Feeling his limit approaching, Naruto increased his pace, gripping her thighs even tighter as he moved his hip in a blur, not enough to live up to the forgotten reputation as the fastest being in the history, but still more than enough to make Sayla scream in pleasure and come strongly around him. A moment later he came, thrusting his cock as far into her pussy as possible, shooting a torrent of hot semen directly into her womb, and soon overflowing her pussy. "Oh!" Sayla moaned in rapture as the feeling of his sperm filling her womb. Smiling to herself, the demoness rolled her hips and tightened her inner wall, milking his cock for more of his seeds. She wasn't disappointed, as Naruto came, until his cum started leaking out of her tight snatch, staining the spot underneath them. He pulled out and got to his knees, spray his cum on her pelvis and stomach. As ropes and ropes of sperm landed on her stomach, Sayla traced her hand sensually along her stomach, taking a decent amount of his sperm onto her hand and finger, and placed the gooey substance into her mouth, spending her time to savor the taste of his cum before swallowing them. "Damn!" Naruto said as he stroked his cock, looking at Sayla as she ate his cum. "On your hands and knees so I can give you the drink you love so much, you naughty demon." Without the need to be told twice, Sayla quickly got on her hands and knees in front of him and replaced his hand on his cock with hers, which barely went around his girth. She stroked his cock and took the head and a couple of inches into her mouth, allowing her master to empty his second orgasm of the day on her tongue and directly down her throat. Have I told you how amazing you are? He only humped in response, but that was enough for him to know. Okay, before we continue. Naruto put his hand at the back of her head, keeping it where it was and turning them around so he could lie down. I have something to tell you. What is it, master? Sayla asked curiously as she pulled back. Gathering her hair, she pulled them back behind her shoulder before she groped her breasts and placed his cock between them and pressed them together, his cock poking out with plenty to spare. You free tomorrow? Sayla nodded her head. Why would she not? Her place was right next to her master. She would follow him anywhere. We're going to this place tomorrow to meet someone. Who is it, master? She asked as she began to knead her breasts together and stroke his cock, dragging her soft along the amazing length while licking the top. Urza. Sayla froze for a second, before going back to pleasure him. She had heard about that girl. Her master had told her everything, and to say she had been shocked by the revelation was an understatement. She also knew that Urza was a member of Fairy Tail, and the sole reason her master was still coming to that place, despite not wanting to be a part of it. Is there any specific reason for this, master? Do I really need one? Naruto asked, putting his hands behind his head as he stared up the ceiling. I thought you didn't want to have anything to do with her, Sayla said. I did, and I still do, but... Naruto sighed as he closed his eyes and decided to change the topic. Well, we will leave early tomorrow morning. We need to find her before she gets dragged into troubles and wastes my time with them. Knowing her and the team she was a part of, she might. It's your choice, master. Sayla smiled. I respect that, and will come with you. I expect nothing less from you, dear. Naruto smiled as he pushed himself up, tilting Sayla's head back so she could look at him. So, what do you want us to do next? I will let you be in control this time. Lemon end. The next morning. She's really here? Sayla asked as she looked around, searching for a specific redhead while doing her best to ignore the stares the people around them were giving her. Of all the places that one could use for training, they chose the beach. The demon muttered as she followed Naruto. When Naruto told her she was out training, she had expected more from the girl said to be one of the strongest of Balam Alliance's most troublesome enemy. Beach wasn't a place for training. Surely Urza Scarlet could be smarter and do better than that. Yeah, she's here. Naruto nodded as he made his way to Urza's location. It was very for him to find her, as Urza had a very powerful and unique magical signature, one that only possessed by one other person, a woman who had the same hair color as hers. There they are. He suddenly came to a stop and pointed. Sayla looked at that direction and sure enough, she saw an armor-wearing girl with red hair training with a boy with pink-haired. That's the girl? Sayla asked in surprise, completely ignored the pink-haired boy. You're right, master. She looks like her mother very much. She also takes after Irene in more than just looks. Naruto smiled as he watched Urza sparring with Gray. However, despite saying that, he could see Urza fighting with strong determination and burning will, something that her mother had lost very long ago. You know what? Naruto turned back to Sayla, took a few thousands of jewels out of his pocket and gave them to her. You take this, and go to the nearest local food store or restaurant to buy for yourself and me a decent breakfast and lunch, okay? Will do, master. Sayla accepted the money. Can I ask what do you want, master? Anything should be fine, I'm not picky. Sayla nodded her head and turned around to walk away. Oh, and try not to kill anyone. You will get me in trouble, you know. The demon bowed her head and disappeared after that. Putting his hands into his pockets, Naruto started making his way toward them. He had already known what to say and what to do. Hopefully, he wouldn't have to improvise, because who knew how unpredictable Urza was. Wearing her fire resistance armor, Flame Empress armor, Urza eyed her training partner, Natsu Dragneel, very carefully as he threw a barrage of punches, which she easily dodged by moving her body backwards. When he tried to kick her, Urza countered by slashing her sword at his side, but the Fire Dragon Slayer was more than capable of dodging an attack like that, and he did with no trouble.
Beat him already, Urza. Standing a few feet away from them with the rest of the team, Gray called out loudly, when will it be my turn?
He muttered impatiently, crossing his arms over his chest.
The two had been training for nearly 15 minutes, and Urza had promised to train with each and every single one of them since she was, undoubtedly, the strongest among them and currently had what it takes to participate in the grand magic game. Shut up, Ice Princess, and let me concentrate.
Natsu growled and blew fireballs at Urza, who simply raised her sword and absorbed some of the fireballs into it while the rest hit her but, because of the fire resistance element of her armor, could barely leave any damage on her body. I'm fired up. He punched his flaming fists together and leapt into the air before generating a torrent of fire from both of his hands and creating a massive fireball upon joining his hands together. TinaKhoaNguyen.
Fire Dragon's brilliant flame. He's overdoing it. Lucy cried as Natsu threw the fireball at Urza when he reached his maximum height.
The Scarlet-Head Knightess growled in annoyance as she raised her sword and braced herself to counter his tremendous attack, as well as preventing the area from taking the worst damages.
Suiton, Suuriya no Jutsu, Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet Technique.
However, before she could do it, a giant, powerful water dragon that left everyone gasping in shock rose from the ocean, flew at the fireball and hit it with formidable might, creating a large amount of steam and dispersing it in the process. Urza gasped and looked around with her eyes widen in shock because there was only 2 people in this world that were capable of using that kind of technique.
Who in the?
Natsu asked, but instantly he was knocked down to the ground when an orb of cold water shot at him and splashed him in the face.
Fire up? I think you need to cool down, brat.
A familiar voice said as the steam slowly disappeared. This beach is a tourist attraction, and nobody needs you to ruin it.
Naruto?
Lucy gasped in surprise when the blonde had finally come into view, standing a few feet behind Urza with his hands in his pocket with a small smirk on his face. The rest of Team Natsu and Team Shadow Gear both looked at him in surprise, with Natsu picking himself up from the ground while growling in annoyance.
What are you doing here? Urza asked curiously, trying her best to keep her voice normal. He had refused to come with them and train her, so he had no idea why he was there. How did you find us? I told you, didn't I? This place is a tourist attraction. Do I need a reason to be here? He answered casually, but then decided to tell the truth when Urza continued to stare at him. All right. I asked Mira. She told me where you lot are. Her team's training location is right next to my house, so I met her yesterday.
He turned to the others and gave them a simple greeting. Good morning.
It's not a pleasure to see you all here again.
But he greeted Lucy with a nod of his head. Lucy.
Is that so? Urza nodded her head in understanding. You haven't answered my first question. She then requiped her Flame Empress armor away, replacing it with her black 2-piece bikini swimsuit. You finally agree with my request? She asked hopefully. I'm not going to train you.
His answer caused her smile to drop. However,
Urza raised an eyebrow in curiosity. What was he wanting to say?
Before he could continue, a certain celestial maid with pink hair appeared, poking her head out from under the sand, right where Lucy was sitting. The blonde celestial wizard cried out in surprise and blushed slightly when she found herself sitting right on top of the pink-haired maid's head. Harem, emergency Virgo, the maiden celestial spirit said with her usual emotionless expression. I'm ready for the punishment.
Why are you here?
Lucy asked as she got up and helped Virgo out of the sand.
Virgo.
The maid spirit Carla pointed her paw at Virgo and said blankly. Lucy has been in the fairy sphere for 7 years, which means that all the celestial spirits who made contracts with her were staying in the celestial realm, Gray said, crossing his arms. Oh, poor spirits. Because of Lucy's fault, Juvia cried as she covered her mouth with her hands.
No. That's not a big problem for us.
Virgo looked down, her eyes still showed no emotion but everyone could see some sadness in them.
What happened? Levi asked curiously.
Everyone turned their eyes to look at the maiden, waiting for her answer. The celestial realm is in a crisis of extermination, the maid said. Please help us. This made everyone, especially Lucy, gasp in shock.
What? What happened?
The king of the celestial realm is waiting for you. Virgo bowed her head. I'm here to pick you up, she informed.
Sure. Natsu cried out, let's go to help them. We're friends. Wait. We humans cannot go to the celestial realm, can we? Lucy asked her spirit. You can enter the realm in the celestial clothes. Virgo replied before a big magic circle appeared underneath them and shone brightly. Ready to go? She asked. Hey, I'm not ready yet.
Hold on a second, Natsu spoke up, turning everyone's attention to him. Virgo also looked at the immortal shinobi and was about to say something to him, but stopped when she saw him winking at her, which was unnoticeable for the others. You all, he pointed to Natsu, and Team Levy of Team Shadowgear can go and save any world you want, but Urza, you stay here. His words, which came out more like an order, shocked them, especially Urza, who could only look at him in shock.
What? Why? It was Lucy who asked that question. Speaking of which, why are you not coming with us? Natsu asked, crossing his arms over his chest. Because I don't want to, and it's not my business, Naruto answered casually. What? The celestial realm is in danger and you're not going to help?
The others immediately stepped in to hold him back.
What an annoying brat. Naruto growled. Scylla would be very disappointed anyway. Urza stays here.
He pointed to her feet. You can choose to leave if that's what you want, but you will regret that decision later. They all were going to regret their decision later. The moment they chose to go to the celestial realm with Virgo, he knew exactly what was going to happen. Urza looked at him, pondering her next decision very carefully. Should he stay or should she follow the others? The celestial realm was in crisis danger, and she wanted to come with her teammates to save it. On the other hand, when she thought about Naruto's words, she wanted to stay. From what she had seen, he was a strong shinobi and might be even stronger than her teacher, who was nowhere to be found at the moment. If there was anyone that could help her master kunoichi armor, it was Naruto. He was the only one that could help her master the art of shinobi and train her into a full-fledged kunoichi. Mentally nodding her head, Urza made up her mind and turned around to face her teammates, who were looking at her and waiting for her to tell them what she was going to do. I think I will stay. She told them. You guys go ahead. I think I will stay here and see what he got to say. She pointed at Naruto, stood behind her. Really? Levi asked. She had decided to come with Lucy and the others. Are you sure, Urza? Yeah, you can take care of a battle without me, right? Urza asked, looking at her friends. Of course, we can. Natsu smirked, punching his palm. We will save Celestial Realm and return in no time. I have no doubt, Natsu. Urza smiled, nodding her head. But if the situation gets worse, come get me as soon as you can, alright? The others nodded their heads. That's settled then. Virgo said nonchalantly as Urza stepped out of the magic circle. Is everyone ready? Let's get going then. After saying that, the magic circle underneath them flashed and teleported everyone away in a flash of light. Well, we will see you guys later then, Urza, Naruto. Jet and Droy said and left without any other word. Alright, what do you want to tell me again? Immediately, Urza turned to him and asked. Follow me. Let's take a walk, shall we? Naruto gestured. Urza quickly followed after him, keeping a close distance between them. Don't you want to know why I didn't let you come with your team? Urza shrugged and nodded her head. Why then? Virgo is lying. He answered, causing Urza to widen her eyes in surprise. Nothing is happening to the celestial world. It's just a pathetic excuse. The spirits came up to bring Lucy to their world. But, why? Urza asked in confusion. Why did she lie? I mean, she just needs to ask and we will come with her. Because, 1 day in the celestial realm equal 3 months in the celestial realm. What? Urza cried, shocked by the revelation. Time passes differently in different worlds. Naruto explained. You spent a day there, and you would only have 5 days left to train for the grand magic game.
Is that what you want? He asked, and Urza furiously shook her head. But what about the others? Why didn't you warn them? She put both hands on her head, gripping her hair as she stopped walking. That's not important right now. I need to warn them, or else they won't get any stronger to participate in the tournament. They will find out eventually. Naruto chuckled. Need me to remind you that you cannot go to that place without celestial clothes? Virgo is the only one who can give them to you, and since you don't know how to get there, I believe that you're not going anywhere. He shrugged. Do you? Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. It was a lie, though, because he knew how to get there. Before he could say anything, Naruto spoke up. Alright, I think this is the spot. Let's talk about your request. He pointed his hand at her. I will repeat it once again. I'm not going to train you, Urza. However, he said loudly, preventing her from saying anything, because I'm a man with a big heart, a lot of generosity, and a lot of free time to spare. I think I will reconsider my decision. Really? Urza was surprised. She didn't quite believe the big heart and generosity part, but decided to keep that opinion to herself as she continued. But what is the catch? You cannot suddenly have a change of heart like that, right? You're right. Naruto smirked slyly. Listen, I will only reconsider my decision if you can master this ninjutsu in 3 weeks. Naruto turned his hand around and created a blue orb of spinning chakra in his palm, which left Urza completely speechless. What is this technique? She asked, looking at the spinning orb with wide eyes. It's called Rasengan. Naruto hid her hand away when she tried to touch it. Just so you know, my old man, your precious teacher is the creator of this technique. Really? Urza asked in surprise. Yep. It took him 3 years to create this technique. He taught it to his teacher, Jiraiya the Toad Sage. She recognized the name immediately. He was the writer of the book Naruto had lent Lucy, who told her it was truly a masterpiece, who took 3 months to master it. Jiraiya then taught it to me, and it took me about 2 weeks to create it. He told her, causing Urza to once again look at him surprised. So I guess it's a fair deal if I give you 3 weeks to learn it. I guess. Urza could only nod her head before asking curiously, but why? I mean, you said you were not going to train me, and yet here you are, teaching me something, which is your father's creation. Well, it's because we have this tradition to pass this technique down to our students. Naruto explained with a small smile. So if you want me to train you, which mean you will become my student, you have to know how to use Rasengan. Usually, you have to become the student first, before you're taught this technique, but I reversed the rule. Alright then. Urza nodded her head. What do I have to do? My father taught you the basic of chakra molding, didn't he? Urza nodded her head. Good. Are you good in chakra control? I still have some trouble, but I think I will do fine. Urza answered truthfully. I trained a lot. Stop, I don't need to know that. Naruto interrupted her, causing Urza to pout in annoyance. Urza didn't have a massive chakra reserve like his, so she had much better control over her chakra than him when he learned Rasengan. I will explain the advanced details to you later. For now, you just need to know that in order to create a full power Rasengan, you have to follow 3 steps: rotation, power, and containment. He reached his hand into his pocket and pulled out a palm-sized balloon. We will start with this. He gave it to her, and Urza accepted with both hands. Water balloon? She asked in confusion. The first is all about learning to spin your chakra in every direction. Naruto took out another water balloon from his other pocket, which he held up in front of him and continued. I want you to spin the water inside it, and bust it. Like this. Instantly, the water balloon exploded, splashing water on his hands. Some of them splashed her in the face, but she didn't mind that much. Try rotating your chakra, and we will see the result. And see if she had the talent to train in the art of a ninja. Alright then. Urza nodded and immediately got to work, holding the water balloon in one hand. It turned out that rotating her chakra was much harder than she thought. However, she was determined that she could do it. What other choice did she have? Chapter 9. 3 months later. Akane Beach was and had always been one of the most popular tourist spots in the country of Fiori. Among its many attractions was the impressive amusement park, the huge sandy beach adjacent to the sea, the five-star hotel housed a casino in its basement, where visitors and gamblers could have enjoyed themselves, and the giant amusement park where everyone could have fun all day and all night with the exciting entertainments it provided. Wild. Rocker, Warcry and Jaeger were three tourists who came to Akane Beach almost every last weekend of the month. They were there of the strongest members of Quattro Cerberus, one of the top mage guilds of the country. All three of them were wearing in colorful swimming trunks, leaving their upper muscular body exposed, earning a lot of attentions from the women, who liked the strong-looking men around them. They also caused many others to look at them weirdly every time they cried out their trademark catchphrase with enthusiasm. "Anyone want a drink?" Rocker looked at his teammates and asked with a smirk on his face. Nodding their heads and agreeing with each other, the three men of Quattro Cerberus quickly headed to the nearest bar counter and took their seats on the wooden chairs that were placed around it. "I will have a coconut, please," he told the barmaid, who nodded her head and then turned her attention to the other two. "What would you two fine gentlemen want?" she asked, flashing them a cute smile, which caused them blush and smile dreamingly almost instantly. While some could find them rather handsome and attractive, because the majority of Quattro Cerberus consisted of male members with mildly punkish attitudes, none of them had interacted with girls much, which left all three of them rather inexperienced with women, especially ones as cute as the ones they were talking to. "Don't worry, boys. It's on me this time." Rocker smirked, pointing at himself. Wild. Both Warcry and Jaeger cried excitedly at the same time before giving their orders to the barmaids, who nodded her head and walked away to get their drinks. "So, the grand magic game is going to take place in 5 days. Who do you guys think the master is going to choose to represent us this year?" Warcry asked as he accepted his drinks from the barmaid, which was cocktail, while Jaeger had a cold beer for a drink. "Bacchus, probably," Warcry answered without taking a second to think. "He is our strongest. Master Goldmine will probably choose him as our team's leader too. To tell you the truth, I hope he is going to choose me as well." Jaeger spoke with a confident smile. "I trained a lot to prepare for this. You guys both have your chances last year. I am hoping that I will have my shot in the upcoming tournament. I hope that you'll. Anyway, Sabretooth is going to participate in this year's game too, right?" Both Warcry's teammates nodded their heads at his question. "Well, they're the strongest guild after all. They will obliviously go to the tournament to make sure that no one is going to take their position." Jaeger balled his hand into a fist while saying that guild, ever since those 5 appeared, we have never had any chances of winning. Hopefully we can have the second place this year. Lania Scale isn't much of a threat. Warcry grinned. "Speaking of position, I heard that Fairy Tail is going to participate this year too, but this time the ones who disappeared 7 years ago will fight." "Weren't they the ones who made Fairy Tail strongest guild 7 years ago?" "So?" Rocker asked arrogantly. "It's not like they can keep up with us. We have gotten a lot stronger. There's no way those guys can keep up with us just after 3 months. Bacchus said there was a mage whose name was Urza Scarlet, Titania of Fairy Tail. She was as strong as he was and their fights had always ended with draws." The other two paled at the thought. They both knew how powerful Bacchus was. To hear a girl who was as powerful as their strongest member was terrifying. Master Goldmine also warned us not to underestimate them. "Let's just hope that we. Can I have a cup of strawberry juice, please?" A sweet voice caught their attentions, and instantly the 3 Cerberus wizards turned their head to the side to look at the source and almost dropped their jaws in shock. Standing next to them was an extremely beautiful girl with long brown hair. She had an amazing, athletic, but feminine figure, with large breasts and wide hip, plump ass and mile-long legs. She wore sunglasses and a black bikini that hugged her impressive assets nicely. It left more to the imagination, but still exposed just enough to make her look extremely sexy. Both men started gasping like a fish. Her beauty outmatched every woman who was standing around her. It also overwhelmed their minds, preventing them from fully controlling their body like normal.
She accepted the glass of lemonade, took a sip before turning her head to look at the boys who were gaping at her. A smile crossed her lips, and she moved her sunglasses down a little to look at them. Her eyes were brown, and they had a rather seductive look in them, just what they imagined from a woman like her.
Well, hello boys, how are you doing?
Warcry, who managed to regain his composure faster than his friends, raised his hands and hit them in their backs, bringing them back to the real world.
We're doing fine.
They said at the same time, trying their best to keep their voice as normal as possible. What about you?
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. She smiled seductively before leaning closer, introducing herself. The name Nightwalker, what yours?
I'm Rocker. You have a strong name for such a beautiful lady like you.
Nightwalker winked, causing Rocker to blush. My name is Jaeger.
The white-haired man followed his friend's example and introduced himself.
I'm Warcry, and we're mages of Quattro Cerberus.
Warcry introduced himself before all three of them cried out at the same time. Wild.
Quattro Cerberus?
Nightwalker gasped before saying with an excited voice, oh my god.
I'm your biggest fan.
All three of them widened their eyes in surprise, but no less excited when Nightwalker walked closer to them.
Is that so?
Warcry asked while scratching the back of his head, blushing brightly.
Yes, I have been a fan of the Hellhound's mage since forever.
She removed her sunglasses and put it on the table. Can I have your signature please? Nightwalker asked while jumping up and down before she magically brought out a poster of Quattro Cerberus and a pen, but all three wizards were too focused on the bounces of boobs to notice such feat from a normal girl.
Oh, here you go. Rocker said embarrassedly and took the poster and the pen, signing his signature on his face.
He gave it to his friends, and soon enough the poster had the signatures of all three of them.
Thank you so much.
She smiled, hugging the poster to her chest. Can you buy you a drink? Before they could see anything, she continued with a beautiful and innocent smile they could not resist. Please, I have always wanted to meet you.
It would be my honor.
Oh, of course.
Warcry nodded his head.
His face was red, and he couldn't take his eyes away when Urza walked to stand between him and Jaeger. 4 beers, please. Nightwalker told the barmaid, who walked away and returned with 4 cups of beer, which she handed to them. All right boys, let's make a toast to Cerberus. Nightwalker held up the glass. Your souls will always be wild.
Wild.
All 3 men cried excitedly and clashed their cups with Nightwalker's, before taking them to their mouths.
They didn't stop until the cup was completely empty. That was amazing.
Nightwalker declared as she put her empty cup down the bar counter, as well as the money for both of her drinks. It's really amazing to meet you here, but I think it's time for me to take my leave.
Ah, that's too bad then. She said.
Yeah, my boyfriend is waiting for me. The smile on their faces dropped instantly when she mentioned her boyfriend, feeling extremely disappointed. He wouldn't be pleased if I took so much time to get myself a drink. She pointed to her strawberry juice. Good luck in the grand magic game.
I hope we will meet again.
She picked up her sunglasses and walked away, waving her hands to the men of Quattro Cerberus. Well, I guess it's time for us to go then, Rocker said to his friends, who nodded their heads in agreement. He reached his hands into his trunk's pockets, looking for his wallet. His eyes widened when he couldn't find it anywhere. Strange.
I thought I brought my wallet with me. Maybe you forgot it at the hotel. Let me pay for the drinks, you can give me back my money later.
Jaeger said and reached his hand into his pocket while Rocker could only smile embarrassedly. However, a shock expression crossed his face when he couldn't find his wallet as well. Where is my wallet? Both of them turned to Warcry, who quickly searched for his wallet and his money. However, much like his friends, he couldn't find it. No. It was at that moment they realized they had been pickpocketed by the same lady who claimed to be their biggest fan. Line break. Nightwalker hummed a victory tune as she walked on the beach of Akane while holding the wallet she had taken from the unlucky wizards of Quattro Cerberus. Her mission had gone a whole lot better than she thought. Nightwalker had to admit that while she didn't want to do it, it was something she had to do to prove to him that she could do it without any trouble. It didn't take her long to reach him, who stood at the far side of the beach, far away from the fun, excitement and entertainment, leaning his back against a coconut tree. He had his arms crossed on his chest, and his eyes closed, but she knew better than that. Even with his eyes closed, the man was fully aware of his surroundings. He also had his guard on and was more than ready to counter her attempt to surprise him and slam her face on the sand if she tried to attack him.
His name was Naruto Uzumaki, and he was her teacher.
"You're back." When she was about to announce her presence, he said. Opening his eyes, the man looked at her and the wallets in her hand, smiling a little that was fast.
"You're better at this than I thought.
It seems you do have the talent to become a full-fledged kunoichi after all."
Nightwalker smirked victoriously and reached her hand for the top of her head.
Grabbing a handful of her brown hair, she then pulled it backwards, removing it from her head, revealing long and beautiful scarlet red hair that went down to the small point of her back. The young woman shook her head, swaying her actual hair from side to side before running her fingers through it, throwing the wig away.
"I told you, didn't I?"
Urza Scarlet said as she put her hands together and formed a hand seal.
In a puff of smoke, the blue crest of fairy tale reappeared on her left arm. "I'm not an innocent girl who doesn't know anything about seduction. You have to take me more serious than that."
She was well aware that she was beautiful and attractive, as many had called her. She also wasn't shy to put them to good use, as on multiple situations, especially during missions that required a lot of attention, Urza had used her beauty to her advantage.
Hell, she even had an armor called seduction armor, which consisted of skimpy clothing.
While she had never put it on in a fight, Urza knew that she could distract her opponents with her sexiness, if they were male of course.
For the past 3 months, Urza had been working her ass off to become a kunoichi. Giving Naruto a perfect version of Rasengan, after 3 weeks, Urza had become his student. While he taught her many useful tricks and shaped her into a kunoichi, Naruto could be a real slave driver when it came to training.
He had pushed her to her limits, taking her to the world where there was no mercy and making her realize that everything she knew about ninjas so far was nothing but lies. It was hard, very hard, but Urza kept her mouth shut and took it. He said she didn't have the talents to become a ninja, which she had to admit that she didn't, but she had always been able to deliver his tasks in time. She might complain about him, his personalities, and his methods whenever they were outside of training, but whenever Urza put on her kunoichi armor, the pride of her teacher, she was serious and gave no objection when he gave her an impossible task, like mastering shuriken arts in less than a week. She was no genius in the art of shinobi, but she could use hard works to make up for it.
"Don't get so cocky."
Naruto shook his head and pointed his hands at her. "Your targets have low intelligence. They also don't have much experience with women. You also disguise yourself with a wig and henge, so they don't know who you are." Urza's right cheek puffed up as she pouted. "It would be a whole lot harder for you if the situations were different, or they were gay, or they were your hateful enemies, or they noticed the whole thing were just too suspiciously good for them."
"You really cannot give me a small, little praise, can you?" Urza asked as she crossed her arms over her chest. "Nope, not yet, not until you have earned it.
There's still much for you to learn, girl. A kunoichi at the mid-chunin level will never get a compliment from a
primordial god of shinobi like me." Naruto shook his head, saying it dramatically while having his hands raised in the air. "You have a massive ego, you know that, Naruto?" "Excuse me?" Naruto asked with a mocking surprise as he leant forward. "What did you just call me again?" He turned his head to the side and pointed to his ear. "Care to repeat it more clearly?" "TCH?" Urza growled, biting the inside of her mouth as she glared at him. "He could be a pain in the ass sometimes. It's nothing, Naruto-sensei," she said respectfully, but rather sarcastically. Naruto chuckled and leant back, crossing his arms over his chest as he looked at his students. "So, what have you learned today?" Be seductive? That's why you haven't made any improvements as a kunoichi in the past 2 weeks, Urza," Naruto said as he pointed his hand at her. "Be seductive? Yes, maybe, but it's only a very small part of what I am talking about. Sure, as a kunoichi you can take advantages of your body to distract your enemies, maybe going as far as using it in sexual intercourse,
intercourses to get what you want from them, but it's not important as long as you can fool them first.
Urza released a sigh she didn't know she was holding. Having sex to get what you want? No thank you.
While she wanted to be a kunoichi, in her opinion it was too extreme. What I am talking about is acting, the ability to blend in.
Oh, I see. The acting skill is one of the most important skills of a shinobi.
It's almost as important as stealth, which you learnt but still failed miserably.
Urza pouted and felt seriously disappointed. Failed? She thought she had done better than that.
Just because she couldn't steal a slice of strawberry cheesecake from his room, while he was sitting right in the middle of it, didn't mean that she couldn't sneak behind someone else and finish them with a palm strike. It's very important for a ninja to blend in with their surroundings and fool their enemies with their acts. In the old days, it's almost impossible for normal shinobi and kunoichi to infiltrate their enemies' bases without a proper preparation.
One small mistake and they got exposed.
Many of them had failed, and got captured by their enemies, who enjoyed putting them through a fate worse than death.
Urza shivered at the thought.
Naruto had told her many stories of the era of shinobi, which was a very, very long time ago. It was one of the darkest times in the history of mankind, where hatred was the only motivation.
It made her realize how lucky she was born in the era so bright like this, but lucky for you, that kind of times had passed a very long time ago. But it never hurt to be extra careful with your attempts to distract someone and then steal their money right from their pockets without them knowing anything about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right.
Urza nodded her head in agreement. Anyway, you wait here, I'm going to. Now where are you going, young lady? Naruto asked and stopped her when Urza turned around and was about to walk away.
I'm going to return this to their owners, of course, Urza stated, bringing up the wallet she was holding.
I say you keep them.
Naruto rolled his eyes, causing Urza to widen her eyes in surprise. You don't steal someone money and then return it back to them later unless they give you a proper reason.
Well, they haven't done anything wrong and... You remember when Natsu challenged me, I made a bet and I took all of your money in the end? Urza nodded. Well, that's how it goes.
You will only give them back their money once they do something to earn them back.
But I don't think I can meet them again.
Urza argued, well, we probably meet at the Grand Magic Game as competitors, but they won't know it was me who stole.
Well, that's the point, Naruto smirked.
It was at that moment Urza realized he would never let her return the money to their proper owners. Keep it. It is what it takes to become a kunoichi.
Really? The red-haired kunoichi asked with a deadpan expression. You know what, I don't believe you this time. Suit yourself.
Naruto smirked and turned his head to the side when he saw his most favorite girl in the world looking for him, carrying a wooden basket in her hands. Anyway, that's enough for you today.
Next time, we will go for a harder objective and see if you can pull it off.
He then raised his hand and called Scylla, over here. The Aetherius turned her head when she heard his call and immediately walked toward them.
I'm back, master.
She bowed her head to him before turning her head to Urza. Urza, not troubling my master, I hope. Urza could only shrug in response. The horned girl greeted the scarlet-haired mage curtly, but it was nothing new. I have brought what you asked, master. She turned back to Naruto and showed him the basket, which was heavy with a lot of foods.
Good work, Scylla. I expect nothing less from you.
He grinned, giving her a thumb up.
Of course, master.
Scylla smiled, blushing slightly before taking notice of the wallets in Urza's hand. So you have done it.
Congratulations.
It didn't take their past experiences for Urza to know that she didn't mean it at all.
Thanks for the compliment. Urza nodded, trying her best to sound polite. Scylla didn't like her in the slightest. Why?
She had no idea. She met the black-haired demon only a few minutes after Naruto had shown her the first step of the Rasengan, but the first moment their eyes met, Urza realized she had already gotten on Scylla's bad side. The two usually got into arguments over the most random of things, usually about Naruto, much like how it was with her and Mira when the two of them were young. But while her best friend was a hothead with short temper, Scylla was as cold as ice, and knew how to use her words to provoke her, insult her, and piss her off, all at the same time.
Feeling the tension between the two, Naruto decided to speak up.
The next thing he needed would be Scylla trying to hurt Urza in the worst way possible in their next spar.
Alright, that's enough staring girls. He said time to eat. I'm hungry and can use some sandwich right now.
Oh, of course.
My deepest apology, master.
Scylla bowed her head and quickly went to prepare a proper place for her master to sit down and enjoy his lunch. After a moment, all three of them took their seats on the orange picnic cloth Scylla had placed on the ground. I will prepare the sandwiches for you, master. Scylla smiled as she opened the basket and took out a bag of sandwiches, a bottle of peanuts butter and a big bottle of orange juice as well as several kitchen equipments.
Alright then. Naruto nodded. Scylla, if you don't mind.
Urza spoke but was interrupted when Scylla put the basket down in front of her.
You can serve yourself, aren't you? The Aetherius asked and picked up a knife. Okay then.
Urza could only say and opened the basket to take her lunch. When she found her favorite strawberry cheesecake inside, Urza couldn't help but smile. At least Scylla remembered her request and bought the cake for her.
Here you go, master. Thank you, Scylla.
Naruto smiled and accepted the sandwich from Scylla. Taking a bite, he then turned to Urza and asked, if you don't mind me asking, why Night Walker?
I mean, it's not exactly a name, isn't it? It's a last name. Urza answered with a nod of her head, and it's a long story. Well, go ahead, I'm all ears. Line break.
In a flash of light, Natsu and the rest of his team, minus Urza and plus Juvia and Juvia, were teleported back to the human world. Turned out that nothing happened to the celestial realm, it was just that the celestial king, the ruler of the world of celestial spirits, wanted to invite Lucy and her friends to their world to celebrate their return. They partied the whole day there, and it was one of the best times they had ever had.
Okay. We've enjoyed such a good time. Natsu said confidently as she stepped forward. Let's go back to continue training.
Sure, we must be strong enough to beat other guilds in 3 months. Gray nodded his head seriously. We have to prepare everything. I wonder where Urza-san is. Wendy spoke her thought out loud as she looked around, searching for the strongest member of their team. Oh, by the way, Virgo, the maiden celestial spirit turned her head and spoke to Lucy emotionlessly, earning everyone's attention. There's one thing that I forgot to tell you.
What is it, Virgo? Lucy asked curiously.
Time goes at a different pace in celestial realm.
Do you mean? Natsu interrupted, saying excitedly that 1 year here equals 1 day in the human realm?
Then it's a dream zone for training. Gray agreed with the same excitement. However, what came next was what none of them had expected. Actually, it's the opposite, Virgo answered blankly. 1 day in the celestial realm equals 3 months in the human world. Her merciless words made them froze in shock.
The team was completely shocked by the information and didn't know how to reply.
Natsu, Gray and Juvia muttered in shock, becoming as pale as ghosts.
Hey, you all. Jet and Droy appeared and greeted them cheerily. We've been waiting for so long. The Grand Magic Fight Battle will be held in 5 days. You must have been training hard. Droy happily informed them, completely oblivious of the mood. Oh my god.
All three of them fell to the ground face first while Wendy fell down to her knees and cried.
Mustache bastard. Lucy cried out angrily with a forced smile. Give us back the time. What are they talking about? Jet asked in confusion.
A few minutes later, after having Virgo changed their clothes back, they all sat down with their back leant their back against a line of the tree, still couldn't believe that 3 months had passed and they had wasted all those precious times to party. The Grand Magic Game was about to start in less than 5 days, and none of them believed that they could make it.
How did we wind up in this mess? Juvia asked, trying to force a smile to her face. Our precious training time. Natsu couldn't help but release a longing sigh. 3 months, just like that. Gray nodded before lowering his head. What are we gonna do? Lucy asked the other.
I guess we have no choice but to let other compete this time. Levi stated sadly, making Juvia release a heavy sigh.
What? Are you fucking kidding me?
Natsu instantly stood up and cried out loudly, there's no way I'm going to let those bastards take all the glory.
We can still make it if we start now. We're going to have a 5-day crash training of hell.
He cried, with fire burned in his eyes. Everyone stand up and better get your ass ready.
There won't even be time to sleep. Lucy. Everyone.
Before anyone could say anything to oppose Natsu's crazy idea of training, they heard a familiar voice and turned their heads to the same direction, where they saw Urza running toward them while waving her hand above her head. Following closely behind her was none other than Naruto Uzumaki, and what annoyed them, Natsu and Gray, the most was that he had a smug smirk on his face as he looked at them, as if he found their pathetic state amusing, which he did.
Urza? Lucy gasped in surprise. Urza looked different.
She had become taller, her hair grew longer, and she was even more beautiful than before. She didn't expect her friend to change so much in just 3 months. They all stood up from their spots, but before any of them could say anything more, she exploded right in their faces.
It's been 3 months. You guys actually took that much time to come back? 1 whole day? What were you doing at the Celestial Realm? Do you know that the Grand Magic Tournament is going to take place next week? We know, Urza.
Lucy interrupted, raising her hands to shield her face just in case Urza got impatient and decided to headbutt her, and we're terrifying right here.
We didn't know time went differently in the Celestial Realm. She then widened her eyes in realization. Hold on, you know? Naruto-sensei told me. Standing behind his student, Naruto casually raised his hand and gave them a peace sign.
Everyone became surprised when they heard the way Urza had called Naruto, and couldn't help but wonder if she had managed to convince the blonde to teach her. But it's your fault too, Lucy, you should have known it. It's written in every book of magic about celestial magic.
WL.
Lucy forcefully smiled in embarrassment. I learnt everything from my mother.
I thought she had taught me everything so. No excuse.
Urza shouted, making them jump in surprise. You know, Virgo was obviously lying when she said the Celestial Realm was on the verge of crisis extermination, Naruto said as he looked at Virgo, who was kneeling on the ground, moaning in delight not too far away from them. She had rope wrapped tightly around her body, and a pile of bricks put on her lap. You do realize that you won't be able to participate in the Grand Magic game like this, right? But what can we do now? Lucy asked. We're out of option here, Urza. There's just no way that we can get stronger in just 5 days. Actually, there is a way to get stronger in 5. However, Naruto was interrupted when a pigeon suddenly flew down and landed on top of Urza's head. How nice. The immortal shinobi muttered as he glared at the pigeon. A pigeon? Lucy asked in confusion. There's something tied to its leg. I think it's a message. Curiously, Urza removed the paper from its leg and read the message out loud for everyone to hear. To Fairy Tale, please come to the suspension bridge deep in the woods. Well, what are we waiting for then? Natsu asked and turned around. The others were about to follow his example, but Urza stopped them. Hold on a second. I don't think it's a good idea. She explained. We don't know who sent us this message. It could be a prank or even a trap. She glanced to Naruto before saying it's very dangerous to just head into something without knowing anything about it. Cannot agree more. The blonde chuckled, nodding his head. It was one of the first lessons Naruto had taught her. So, what do you suggest then? Gray asked, crossing his arms over his chest. We split into 2 groups. Urza pointed her hand to them. One group goes straight ahead, while the others will follow closely behind undetected. If this is a trap, then we have to prepare to deal with it. They all agreed to her idea and split into 2 groups. Natsu, Gray, Lucy, Juvia, Jet and Droy, the 2 half of Team Shadowgear would be Team 1 and go ahead while Urza and the rest of them would follow behind, hidden carefully in bushes and behind trees. Still don't think this is a good idea? As the groups made their way to the suspension bridge in the forest, Naruto asked when he noticed the puzzled expression on her face. Yeah, this could be an ambush. We have made a lot of enemies out of dark guilds over the years, so it wouldn't be a surprise if the one who sent the letter was a group of dark wizards.
She turned around to look at him. You taught me that, didn't you? Always be one step ahead of your enemy? 1, 2, 3 steps, it's not really important as long as you can think ahead of your enemy and quickly come up with a plan to deal with them.
Naruto told her split into groups is a very good idea, and I can see that you have thought thoroughly about this.
He had to admit.
Even he could not do it better in this situation. For the first team, Natsu, Gray and Juvia were people who could deal some great damages, while Lucy, Jet and Droy could provide the necessary support with their magic. The second team, meanwhile, had Wendy, Levi and the Exceeds, who all had small bodies and could easily hide behind a tree or inside a bush.
Naruto and Urza, meanwhile, could hide anywhere and easily erase their presences. Are you praising me, sensei? Urza looked at him and smirked amusedly. What did I say? Naruto blared at her. Don't get so cocky. Your head is already big enough.
Urza pouted when he patted her on the head. And if you still think this is going to be an ambush, then I will tell you that Scylla is following us.
Urza could only nod her head. She knew the demon was following them. Why?
Because Urza knew Scylla could never stay 100 feet away from her precious master unless he told her to do it.
Nobody's here.
Natsu growled while punching his palm, scouting around the area with his eyes. When they arrived at the suspension bridge, nobody's here. What the hell?
Was it a prank?
Gray asked, having the same scowl as Natsu. Then suddenly, much to their surprise, the bridge was put back together. Broken woods and ropes flew up from below and started attracting to each other, creating a whole bridge that looked as good as new and connected to the cliff on the other side. Natsu said in amusement as he witnessed the display of a magic called the Ark of Time, a caster spell that revolved around the manipulation of the time of objects of non-living things and non-sentient living things. The name of the caster of this magic was Altair Milkovich, who was a former member of Dark Guild Grimoire Heart. She was on Tenru with her guild 7 years ago. More reason for them to believe that it was a trap, but because Naruto had seen the person she became after the event at Tenru, he didn't think she still harbored ill feelings toward Fairy Tail. Hostile or not, it was something he could tell instantly, but decided not to because he would like to see how it was going to turn out.
Gray asked in shock, turning to Juvia. You think it's them?
He sent her a meaningful look and Juvia couldn't help but nod her head nervously.
This must be our invitation. Urza hardened her eyes at the mention of time magic. This might be a trap.
I don't know who could it be, but let's go for it. Everyone nodded their head at Natsu's words and continued to make their way forward. Then after 5 minutes of traveling, the first group flinched when they saw 3 cloaked figures appearing in front of them. He was right, Altair Milkovich was among them, and there was also the girl who left Tenru with her, Mirti or something. The third figure, however, was someone he had seen before.
From what Naruto could tell, none of them was hostile.
They also didn't have any negative feelings toward Fairy Tail, showing that they come here in peace and simply wanting to meet Fairy Tail like they had said in the message.
Thank you for coming.
The middle one, a male, said and slowly removed his cloak, just like his 2 companions. He was a young man with a cold gaze, blue hair and red tattoo on the right side of his face. Fairy Tail. Standing at his left was a pale-skinned woman with dark purple hair and brown eyes. Spotting a rather voluptuous figure consisted of little more than a tabard-like garment that most likely exposed her back. The attire was opened on both sides of her body except for a small attachment at her waist, exposing a fair amount of her large breasts. She also donned long black boots that leave her upper thighs bare, a white cloth around her head and holding a large crystal orb close to her hip. At his right was a curvaceous young lady with hot pink eyes and wavy back-length pink hair. Her outfit consisted of a red dress with a golden trim around a deep neckline that exposes a large amount of her ample cleavage, with a short skirt and a belt with a yellow ribbon tied around her waist and black-colored stockings and brown boots.
Jalal!
Urza muttered in surprise, while her friends who were standing at the front gasped in shock at the presence of their former enemies.
You know that brat? Naruto pointed, asking distastefully. Yeah, we're childhood friend, back at the Tower of Heaven. Urza nodded her head, missing the distastefulness in his tone, and also, don't call him a brat.
He's not that much younger than you. Naruto only rolled his eyes in response.
You all haven't changed a bit. The blue-haired man, Jalal said to Natsu and the others with a small smile.
He paused for a second before looking around. Where are the others? I'm sure that Urza was with you.
I'm here.
Urza spoke up as she stepped out from her hiding spot, with Naruto and the rest following behind her.
There was no more reason for them to be on guard. Cannot be too careless, can we? You're right, Urza. Jalal nodded his head. We should have put more details in the message, but we cannot risk it.
We're not an illegal guild, but we're not a friend to the Magic Council either.
He explained before continuing. I'm sure you've all heard about my jailbreak by now?
Yeah, Urza nodded her head.
Though, to be honest, it's not what I had planned.
The man said with a puzzled look, looking away to avoid Urza's eyes. Mirti and I broke him out, Altair said with a smile. I didn't do anything, you did it all by yourself, mostly, Altair. The pink-haired Mirti said.
She then looked at Juvia and smiled brightly. Juvia, it's been a while.
The water girl, who was shaking just a few seconds ago, couldn't stop herself from smiling gently at the emo-turned-cheerful pink-haired girl.
Hold on a second, you escaped? Lucy asked, and also, you two are from Grimoire Heart. It makes them our enemies, doesn't it?
Gray asked, looking at Altair.
Yes.
The sins I've committed throughout my life are many. Even if I spent my entire life atoning, it wouldn't be enough. So, I want to at least save as many people as I can that I encounter throughout my life.
For example, Jalal right here. Altair said as she placed a hand on Jalal's shoulder. It's fine.
You and I both wrestle with the darkness. This is an old story.
Jalal told her. Jalal, how's your memory?
Urza asked, crossing her arms together. It's all there, every last detail.
Urza widened her eyes in surprise. 6 years ago, when I was still in prison, my memory came back. Urza, I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Jalal told her sadly. I was responsible for what happened to you on that paradise island. Jalal was controlling me, though, so please, don't blame me too much.
Altair added quickly before any of them could say anything.
I thought I was going to die in prison, the death penalty, that's what I received. Up until Altair broke me out, that is.
Jalal said. So, does that mean you found some reason to live now? Wendy asked. Wendy, I should tell you, the Jalal that you know and me, aren't the same people.
Jalal told her with a soft smile, remembering that she had once mistaken him for another man she had known when she was younger.
Ah, yes. I've already figured that out. Wendy assured him, nodding her head.
Jalal nodded and turned to answer the question she had asked him about finding a reason to live.
A reason to live, it's not something so wonderful as that. We created a guild.
It's not a legitimate guild, nor is it a dark guild, we are an independent guild, Crime Sorcière.
Jalal answered. Ah yeah, I have heard about Crime Sorcière. Urza nodded her head. They've destroyed many, many dark guilds over the years.
Yes, our guild is here to drive away all of the evil brought into this world by dark guilds and Zerif. So that never again will dark mages like us be born, and never again will an innocent be forced to suffer at their hands.
Jalal said. But then, why don't you become an official guild through the council? Gray asked. Well, it's because I'm a fugitive, Jalal answered uncomfortably.
And because we're former Grimoire Heart members, Mirti added, chuckling nervously.
Besides that, we can't go after dark guilds if we're an official guild.
The laws prohibit us from doing so.
She's right. Our guild is fine the way it is right now. Jalal agreed.
So, the reason we summoned you here was not just to introduce ourselves. We've heard that you're entering the Grand Magic game, Altair explained. We can't come near the event grounds, so it would appear we have a favor to ask of you.
Do you want us to sign one of you up? Natsu joked, we could do that for you.
Every year, during the event, I've felt a strange magical force.
Naruto raised an eyebrow when he heard that.
Reaching his hand into his back pocket, the blonde took out a calendar and started checking the date. I want to identify the source of that magic,
Jalal said. Oh dear.
Naruto muttered sarcastically as he looked at the date.
It had been 400 years already? He barely noticed. What the heck? Natsu asked in confusion.
Fiori guilds are going to be there, correct? There's surely gonna be one or two suspicious magical forces,
Lucy added.
I thought that at first as well, but this magic had an evil presence to it like Zeref's.
Perhaps the presence is coming from us since we've been so close to Zeref, Jalal remarked.
We want to know the true source of this magical force, Altair insisted.
From that, we might be able to track down where Zeref is. Jalal nodded, telling them seriously.
Of course, winning or losing is a different story. Mirti smiled. We're going to be cheering on Fairy Tail from the shadows. But meanwhile, please search for the mysterious magic. Well, it sounds like you're on a wild goose chase. Urza crossed her arms on her chest before saying, but we'll help you out, Urza promised. We appreciate it, Altair replied, smiling gratefully.
You sure about that, Urza?
Gray asked unsurely but reconfirmed her decision with a firm nod of her head.
Alright, if that's it then let's get back to training, Urza said as she looked around. We shouldn't waste any more time. About that, I think that's something I can help you with.
Altair stepped forward. You do us a favor, it's only normal for us to give you something in return.
Aside from Urza, the rest of you didn't have any training for the past 3 months, did you?
She asked, and the ones she mentioned looked away in embarrassment.
To tell you the truth, we have wanted to meet you sooner,
Mirti explained, but you suddenly disappeared with Virgo, the maiden celestial spirit, and Urza was so focused on her training with him, she pointed her hand to Naruto, so we didn't want to disturb them.
Is that so? Juviet nodded her head in understanding. So, what do you want to give us? We'll give you your compensation up front. She held out the orb of lacrima she was holding. With my new improved time arc, I can raise the level of your ability.
Natsu, Lucy and Gray all said in confusion.
A power-up, I guess it's fine to think of it that way, but it's a bit different.
Altair explained. Every mage has something like a container inside them that determines the limits of their magical power. In the case that the container becomes emptied, the ether nano comes from the atmosphere and enters the body. After a while, the container is returned to normal. But recent studies have identified a part of that container inside each mage that isn't normally used, a dormant potential power inside of everyone, second origin. Altair smiled. My Ark of Time can evolve your containers so that they're capable of using second origin. In other words, it will give a giant boost to your magical power, even more than any of the training you've done until now. She finished, causing the members of Fairy Tail to cheer out excitedly.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to endure pain greater than your wildest imagination. The black-haired woman turned to the rest and stated evilly, causing them to sweat nervously.
Alright. Natsu cheered loudly. Let's get this over with so we can go to the grand magic game. Line break. Ah.
With that decided, they all returned to the beach, finding a little cabin far away from anyone else.
Natsu, being the most energetic one, agreed to go first and let Altair start the process. However, the moment Altair casted her magic and runes started appearing on his body, he fell on his back and started moaning, writhing, bending his body, gripping his throat, and rolling all over the place in pain. Gray, Juviet and Wendy could only look at him in shock and horror. So, he is your teacher now?
Lucy asked Urza as she looked at Naruto, who was sitting on a nearby boulder while facing away from them. How did you convince him to teach you?
I didn't. Urza shook her head. It must be Mira.
He said he had met her before coming here.
Is that so?
Lucy nodded her head with a smile. No wonder why he had changed his mind.
The beautiful demon of fairy tale had always had that kind of positive influence on other people. You must be a whole lot stronger now, aren't you? I do, but it wasn't easy. Urza answered truthfully. He really put me through hell just to get to this level. Are you, what does it call again, a kunoichi now? Urza nodded her head with a smile. There's still much for me to learn, but I think I can call myself one now. Good for you, Urza. Lucy giggled, happy for her friend. A moment later, Altair was done with Natsu. Panting heavily, the young boy shakily picked himself up from the ground. It was one of the most painful experiences he had ever had. How do you feel, Natsu? Levi asked as everyone gathered around him, eagerly for the result. I don't know. Natsu said as he put a hand on his chest. I didn't feel that much. But then he stopped, his eyes widened in shock. You should be able to feel it now. Altair asked with a smug smile as she held her lacrima orb at her hip. Why yeah, this is, He took a deep breath and called for his magic before igniting a huge amount of flame from his hands, which burned brighter and stronger than it had been. This is great. He roared and increased his magic power, causing his whole body to be lifted on fire. Everyone widened their eyes in surprise at the impressive display of magic. The intense heat caused them to step back cautiously. Whoa, that was strong. Lucy stated in amazement. Very impressive. Urza nodded her head. No pain, no gain, I guess. Gray smirked as he removed his shirt, making Juvia squeal in delight. Alright, I'm next. Those bastards are going to watch out, because we're going to take the grand magic game by storm. Natsu roared to the sky, throwing both of his fists into the air. I'm all fired up. He then looked down, searching for a specific person, who wasn't that impressed by the show. Naruto. Yes? Natsu? Naruto asked, standing up and jumping down to the ground. I want to test my strength. Natsu pointed while yelling confidently, let's fight. And I'm surprised. Naruto stated sarcastically. Oi, you're not going to pull another bet again, aren't you? Gray asked worriedly. Much like the other members of Team Natsu, he didn't want his money to be taken again. Don't worry, I am not. Naruto shook his head. Don't get me wrong, but I want to see how powerful he has become after unlocking Second Origin. No consequence, of course. His words caused Natsu to grin sadistically. It's exactly what he was looking for. You sure about that? Carla asked. Pretty sure. Naruto nodded his head. Come at me, brat, show me what you got. Alright. I'm going to burn your sorry ass into oblivion. Natsu said as he called for his newfound power, fusing the lightning and fire inside his body. Moto Rarenryu. Fire flared and lightning cracked around his body, creating a strong explosion of magic that nearly knocked those who was standing around him to the ground. Oi, you're overdoing it, Natsu. Lucy said as she tried to cover her face with her hands. Didn't he nearly defeat Master Hades with this power? Nerdy asked in amazement, shocked by the display of magic. Natsu must be stronger than him now. Jalal nodded his head seriously. The thought truly terrified the two former members of Grimoire Heart. Alright. Natsu said as he lowered himself down. I'm coming, Naruto. He charged forward with no intention of holding back. Engulfing his right hand with lightning and the other with flame, Natsu then swung his arms around, extending both elements in length, creating a massive vortex of fire and lightning that traveled toward Natsu with great force. However, instead of doing anything to dodge, Naruto shocked everyone by standing still and let the vortex hit him, creating a massive explosion that shook the entire beach and knocked everyone who wasn't aware to the ground. However, before anyone could say anything, the fire was blown away and dispersed without a trace in less than 5 seconds. Everyone was speechless. Not a single person could muster a single word when everything was clear. Even Urza, who had been training under him in the last 3 months, couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. Is that it? Natsu dropped his jaw in shock when he saw Naruto standing in the same place completely unharmed, with his right arm extending to the side. You know what the good news is? I actually feel the heat this time. Did he just it simply by swiping his arm around?
Having powerful magic doesn't make you powerful, Natsu. Naruto said as he turned to the side and flicked a piece of dirt from his shoulder. You have unlocked your second origin, but you still need to learn how to use it properly, or else you won't make any different. He turned his attention back to them. All of you do.
He's right.
Altair nodded her head in response. It'll be better for you to have a lot of training after this to get used to your new ability. She turned to Gray and told him, Gray, can you please step forward?
Man, this suck. Natsu huffed and crossed his arms on his chest as Naruto approached him.
Look at you, you didn't get worn out even after using lightning fire dragon slayer magic, which is still more than enough. The immortal shinobi said as he patted the boy on his shoulder. You have 5 days to prepare, so use it wisely, because you're going to need it. He walked away, muttering the last part to himself.
So, who is he?
Jalal turned to Urza and decided to ask her. He's a new member of Fairy Tail, at least, new to us.
Urza answered, he's my teacher. You know.
I can see that I have met him somewhere before. The blue-haired man said, causing Urza to widen her eyes in surprise, but then came to a conclusion for it.
Maybe it was his father.
He was my teacher, the one who taught me how to use magic.
Urza said Naruto-sensei looked a lot like his father, so I guess you mistake him because of the resemblance.
Jalal only shrugged in response.
Chapter 10.
Twice a year, the grand magic game for mages was held. The capital of Fiori, the flower-blooming capital, Crocus was busting with its citizens as well as mages of Fiori coming from all over the world in order to participate in this certain event. In the center was the king of Fiori Palace, Mercurius, an extremely large and tall building, appearing as one of the most visible elements in the valley where Crocus is located, and towering over all of the city's other buildings. Mercurius was surrounded by a lush garden, which, much like the rest of the city, was adorned by a large amount of flowers, possessing flowerbeds and, in addition, artistically arranged plants and small, tidy hedges, which have square, hollow spaces on their edges, housing ornately decorated street lamps, with wavy poles ending in large orbs, with circular objects surrounding them, seemingly floating. The streets there were adorned with mosaics, which consisted of a variety of small, flat rectangular stones arranged to resemble semicircles. In front of the palace sat a fountain, surrounded by a ground-level, round and shallow pool. Water jets jut upwards from both the fountain and the pool, with the former also housing some plants, or possibly statues of plants, on its base.
In the mountains to the west, the great magic tournament was going to be held in the Domus Flow.
The place appeared to be a large, round, open battle arena and had no cover on the top. It has numerous arches in its walls and a large entrance. The Domus Flow also had 4 gigantic statues, each holding a staff with a big circle on top, facing inwards, surrounding the Domus Flow. 4 gigantic chains could also be seen around the Domus Flow, each starting from a circular metal on the ground around the Domus Flow, connecting to circles behind the statues, and reaching down another circular metal in the ground. And in the middle of the town, was Fairy Tail's strongest team, Team Natsu. 5 of them were lying on the ground in the middle of the street, exhausting from all the hardcore trainings they had gone through to get used to their newfound powers. Ursa Scarlet, meanwhile, was completely fine and was standing beside her huge luggage with a map of the capital in her hands.
Oi, I still don't feel so great about all this.
Gray said through gritting teeth, trying to push himself up to his feet. We don't know for sure if that spell worked. He still remembered every single detail about the pain he had to go through to boost his own ability and unlock his second origin. He didn't know if it was really worth it or not.
Yeah, but I do feel like my magic power has increased.
Lucy said with a long sigh. All my joints are still totally sore, though.
Geez, don't you guys feel embarrassed for yourselves?
Urza asked as she looked away from the map and turned her eyes to her teammates.
Why are you completely fine, Urza?
Lucy asked with a sweat dropped, looking at the taller woman. She probably had her second origin unlocked from the start, Gray concluded, and Lucy could only nod her head in agreement.
That makes sense. Natsu agreed wholeheartedly before he stood up from his position on the ground, raising his hand above his head and asked the strongest woman of Fairy Tail, Can I ask you something?
Go ahead.
What is he doing here? The pink-haired dragon slayer cried in a dramatic manner, throwing his hand at Naruto, who were standing beside Urza's luggage and reading the new issue of the weekly sorcerer magazine while eating a big hot dog, something he took from Natsu before he could even take a bite. Didn't he say he don't want to participate in the grand magic game with us? After witnessing and experiencing firsthand the powers of the new member of Fairy Tail, Natsu had decided that his guild needed someone like him to ensure their victory at the tournament. However, much to Natsu's surprise and Urza's expectation, when he asked Naruto to join his team, Naruto refused without thinking, claiming that he didn't want to waste his time fighting for the guild. His answer caused Natsu to explode with anger, but a glare from Urza was more than enough to shut him up and make him back away in fear. You know, as her teacher, it's only natural for me to come here with my student. Naruto answered simply, while Urza nodded her head with a small smile. This tournament is a perfect opportunity for Urza to test her powers, and I really want to see how well she handles herself against someone other than me, who is far stronger than her. He finished while grinning smugly. And you said my head was big enough. Urza told him with a tone full of sarcasm, but Naruto simply gave her a foxy grin in response. Anyway, since you are here to see the result of our training, does that mean that I can only use ninja techniques in battles? She asked, crossing her arms over her chest. It would be too bad if he didn't allow her to use her magic. She was both a mage and a ninja. She didn't want to give up on something in favor of the other. She also wanted to fight for her guild with the best of her abilities, and with everything she had, something Urza believed she had to do in order to bring glory back to Fairy Tail. Don't worry about that. You can use anything you want, as long as you can come out with the victory. The Scarlet Head Mage nodded her head with a smile. After all, you're a mage first and a kunoichi second, aren't you? Yeah, you're right. Urza smiled, nodding her head. He could be strict with his training. He might be a pain in the ass sometimes, but in the end, Urza had to admit that he was a very good teacher, as well as a very understanding one. But of course, you lose a single match and there will be hell to pay. Urza nervously took a step back when she saw an evil smirk crossing his face. I will try my best then. A forced smile was all that she could manage. Naruto then looked around and caught sight of the third master of Fairy Tail, Makarov, with Asuka sitting on his shoulders, her parent following closely behind them. Jet and Droy were with them as well. Those two weren't going to participate in the Grand Magic game since they were too afraid to go through the same pain Team Natsu had to go through to unlock their second origin. So, you guys have finally made it. The master greeted them with a huge smile. Oh my, I didn't expect you to come here too, Naruto. He said brightly, looking at the blonde. I have my reason to come here. He answered simply. Alright, let's get on with this even already. Makarov said, crossing his arms on his chest. Kahahaha. We'll show them the power of Fairy Tail. Makarov announced while laughing confidently. Did you hear that, Fairy Tail? Where? Them? The weak little guild forever claims the last place? PFT, Kafufu, you guys gonna get the last place again this year too? Everyone knows Sabretooth is gonna dominate this year too. Grr. Natsu gritted his fist in anger, glaring angrily at the citizens around them. Whoever wants to laugh them, let them go ahead and laugh. Makarov said with a confident grin. We will just wait and see which one is going to get the last laugh. Laugh. He then turned back to look at Team Natsu, who he had decided to be the team who participated in the Grand Magic game, since the other teams couldn't make it. Okay everyone, the first day of the Grand Magic game is going to take place tomorrow morning. But I was informed that all participants must return to their lodgings by 12 p.m. so make sure to return to your place before that time, alright? I see. It's just like that Cinderella story then. Lucy said with a bright smile. You know that story is going to be a lot easier to understand if Cinderella could have approached him and told him everything he should know about herself. Naruto pointed out, making Lucy look at him with a nervous smile. They danced all night and what, they stared at each other the whole time? Cinderella could at least tell him something about yourself. It's a bit creepy, don't you think? Lucy wanted to argue, but before she could do it, he asked, changing the topic with a simple question. So, have you finished my book yet?
Oh, of course, I'm so sorry for taking it so long. Lucy nodded her head as she reached into her package and took out the book Naruto had lent her. I actually finished it last night. It's really good, so I wanted to enjoy it thoroughly.
Once again, I'm glad that you like it. Naruto smiled and put his book away. Have you finished my books? Lucy asked, fidgeting nervously, and continued when Naruto nodded his head. What do you think about them? Honest opinion? Lucy nodded. Well, I can see that you're not a professional.
There are many plot holes in your early works, and the writing style is a bit inexperienced. Lucy's smile dropped a little. She had expected that, but it's still sad to hear. Still, I could see many improvements in your latest works, so all I can say right now is that you have great potentials to become an author who is going to write best-selling novels in the near future.
Is that so? Lucy's expression immediately brightened up when she heard that. Thank you. Only telling the truth. Naruto smiled in response. Shut it, guys.
Natsu jumped in between the two of them with a toothy grin. His previous frustration for Naruto had disappeared. Stop talking nonsense. We've come all the way to this city and still got plenty of time left. We may as well hit the town. He grabbed Lucy and Happy before dashing off. He also tried to grab Naruto too, but the immortal shinobi easily slipped out of his grip and stood in the same place.
Hey! Do you even know where the lodgings are? Urza shouted after them. Honeybone, right? Lucy asked loudly. We'll be there by 12 for sure.
With that, the trio dashed away.
Excited, isn't he?
Naruto asked before he reached his hand into the inner pocket of his jacket and took out a thick book, with the words rulebook written on the cover. He then gave it to Urza, who widened her eyes in shock at the thickness of the book. Urza finished the tournament's rulebook before midnight.
Read this? Urza stuttered. Before midnight? Don't worry, Urza, I will help you.
Levi stepped forward with a smile, wearing glasses. I brought wind reading glasses.
Magics, how magical of them.
While Urza smiled gratefully at her friend, Naruto could only grumble in annoyance. Alright then, do what you must before midnight. He pointed his hand at her before walking away.
Where are you going, sensei?
Urza asked, but Naruto simply waved his hand above his head without turning around before disappearing into the crowd of the people of Crocus. So, Urza. Makarov stepped forward and asked Urza with a small smile, holding his hands behind his back. It seems things have been going well for the two of you.
Oh, yes it does, master.
Urza nodded her head with a smile. The others parted away after that, with Urza heading to the Honeybone Lodge with Levi to read the book of rules Naruto had given her. Wandering around the streets of Crocus, Naruto turned his head around, double-checking his surroundings and making sure that no one, especially Fairy Tail's mages, was following him, or looking at him in a strange way. Talk about paranoid. After Naruto was sure that he wasn't drawing any unnecessary attention, the blonde started looking for his favorite demon, Scylla, who he was sure had been following him since morning. He felt bad that he had to tell her to stay behind, because first, he wasn't sure about their opinions about demon like Scylla, and second, he didn't want her to feel uncomfortable around the race, and the people she hated so much. It took Urza 2 weeks to fully trust the Demoness, and even more time for the later to consider the strongest female wizard of Fairy Tail someone worthy of her attention, despite knowing full well who she was. Scylla had become a little bit more civil with the human after spending the last 7 years with him, but he wasn't sure how she would react, would she probably not show it visibly, if he introduced her to anyone else other than Urza. Spotting Scylla standing next to a local souvenir shop, Naruto quickly made his way to her. Scylla was wearing a dark cloak, which had a hood that was large enough to cover her horns. The cloak hid most of her feature, except for her face, which was having a disgusted expression as she glared at the citizens around her. However, seeing him approaching her, Scylla immediately brightened up. There you are. Naruto grinned as he stopped in front of her. Master. Scylla lowered her head. How do you do? I'm fine. Naruto smiled before asking, have you been following me since morning? Yes, master. When I said you should stay behind, I really didn't want you to follow me from behind, you know. Naruto sighed as he put his hands into his pockets and looked at her. You're free to do whatever you want, so why don't you head home or find something entertaining to do? Because I want to make sure that those humans aren't going to bother you, Master, Sayla replied. The expression on her face remained unchanged.
Don't worry, they're not. He grinned, shaking his head. Plus, even if they were, you wouldn't come out of your hiding and curb stomp every single one of them, would you?
Knowing her, it was probably what she would do if she had the chance and the permission for it. Anyway, follow me, there's something I want to discuss with you. He walked away and gestured her to follow him.
What is it, Master? It's the reason I am here.
Do you remember what happened exactly 400 years ago, during the Dragon Festival?
They're late.
Wearing her favorite Heart Cruise pajama, Urza scolded lightly as she looked at the cards in her hands with half-lifted eyes. It was 1 hour before midnight, and none of her teammates had yet shown up at Honeybone, the lodging that had been assigned to Fairy Tail's team. Levi had left as soon as they had gone through the rulebook, leaving Urza alone in her room. With the wind-reading glasses, it didn't take the two of them more than 2 hours to go through the rulebook and remember some of the most important points of the Grand Magic game. Unfortunately, after that, aside from cleaning some of her weapons to make sure that they would stay in the best shape, Urza couldn't find anything more interesting to do. She had checked her room to make sure that there was no funny business in the place, but she couldn't find anything suspicious in the end.
Knock. Knock.
Then suddenly, when she was about to drop her cards, she was playing with herself to kill time, she heard the sound of someone knocking on the door. Standing up from her position on the floor, Urza quickly made her way across the room, hoping that it was Natsu and the rest of the gang.
Coming,
she called when they knocked again.
Twisting the doorknob, Urza opened it and widened her eyes in surprise when she saw Naruto standing in front of her with a bag in his hands. Naruto-sensei? What are you doing here? Just this time, I will allow you to call me Naruto.
Naruto said as he raised the bag he was holding at her eye level. Yo.
Hope you're up to some late meal. I brought snacks.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a bit hungry right now. Urza smiled as she took the bag from Naruto's hand.
Peeking inside, Urza's eyes shone with excitement when she saw a small, white box that contained her favorite strawberry cheesecake. Please come in. She stepped out of the way and insisted him to enter.
This place isn't so bad,
Naruto commented as he removed his shoes and made his way into the room. When I heard Honeybone was one of the worst places a guild that participates in the Grand Magic game could get, I thought it was a dump or something.
Yes, it's very nice.
Urza nodded her head in agreement. Do you know that Sabretooth gets to stay at Crocus Garden?
Urza shook her head. It's the best hotel in this city. Talk about the benefits of being the #1 guild of Fiori. Not for long, though. Urza stated confidently. Fairy Tail is going to climb to the top this year. Well, we will see about that.
Naruto grinned before spotting the cards lying on the floor. Look like you're in need of company.
Want to have a few rounds with me?
Of course, feel free to join Naruto. With that, the two of them settled down. Naruto picked up his cards and took a look at what he had while was pretty much doing the same thing, only that she was trying to form a plan to beat him with the cards she had.
So, have you finished reading the rulebook?
I have,
Urza answered his question. That's good then. What do you think?
Well, it's very interesting. Urza shrugged. Since the competition changes every year, and no one knows what they have to deal with until right before it begins, victory will be decided by those who can dominate several different kinds of competition. I guess of among the members of the team, I am the one who can face all the challenges the tournament throws at us.
Agree.
Naruto nodded his head, throwing a card out based on the competitions of the past few years. It seems there'll surely be matches between members of the guilds. To tell you the truth, in my opinion, aside from the matches, you can easily dominate the entire competitions with just what you have learned from me. There are many strong mages who will take part in the tournament, you know. She pointed out there are Bacchus of Quattro Cerberus, those 5 extraordinary wizards of Sabretooth who are responsible for their current position at the #1, and even Jura of the Wizard Saint from Lamia Scale.
I should keep my guard on around them rather than taking them lightly, because I have a few tricks up my sleeves. Those tricks can easily take someone's life, and do more harm than good if you're not careful. Naruto reminded her. Some of the techniques he had taught Erza, while they weren't even close to A class, aside from the Rasengan, or S class, were extremely dangerous in the current era, as they were nearly as powerful as the more advanced spells. Don't want to deliver a kill strike, do you? Yes, but I heard there are protection spells around the arena to prevent the competitors from facing life-threatening situations, so I don't have to hold back. Naruto nodded his head. Speaking about that, when will you start teaching me the stronger techniques? So far, the Rasengan was the highest-ranked technique she had learned from him, and she couldn't even use some of the lower-ranked ninjutsu as powerful as he could. When you are ready. Naruto answered simply before she could say anything. He continued, and for your information, I didn't know anything other than henge, transformation technique, kawarimi, body replacement technique, a couple of basic wind style and some random techniques in Rasengan before I was 19. Erza widened her eyes in surprise. Naruto believed he shouldn't tell her about the amount of variants of Rasengan he could use at that age, because it would not go well with what he was trying to teach her. You see, it's not about the ranks, it's about how effective you can use them. Even a simple henge can become a distraction that can fool even a primordial god. Well, if you say so. It was the only response Erza could come up. They played for a few more rounds, with Naruto being the one who won every time, before Erza got impatient and started walking back and forth in the room, waiting for her teammate to return. Around 11:45, everyone except for Wendy showed up, and immediately Erza brought them to their knees. While Gray and Lucy looked guilty, Natsu was shaking, growling and cursing in frustration. You guys, seriously, you're late. Erza Scarlet crossed her arms underneath her ample chest, scolding at the three younger mages kneeling on the floor in front of her. Where have you been wandering around up till now? She asked, glaring at them. Naruto meanwhile was sitting on his bed writing something into the small notebook with a pencil, having returned to their room as soon as he walked Mira back to her own lodge. Just another boring dinner, Gray said with a nervous smile. Well, it's complicated. Well, I mean, Lucy tried to explain, but all she could was making out some incompetent words. You guys met the twin dragons of Sabertooth, didn't you? Naruto asked. While wandering around the streets with Scylla, Naruto had seen two Sabertooth wizards showing their strength against guilds not too far away from where Natsu, Lucy, and Happy were playing. He had seen them before. They were the twin dragons of Sabertooth, whose magics were light and shadow dragon slayer magic. How did you know? Lucy asked in surprise. Gah! I'm so gonna get those guys back, no matter what. Natsu and Happy cried out in frustration, balling their hands into fists. You will have your chance soon enough, Natsu, Naruto said and turned his eyes to look at the clock. It was 12:15. It's nearly midnight. I wonder what the organizers have in store for us. Anyway, where is Wendy? Erza asked, looking around. We decided that she will be our reserve. That's right. Lucy nodded her head. She's late. It's almost 12 though. That little girl is out there alone, Lucy said worriedly. I hope she is okay. Don't worry, she'll be fine. Happy spoke up. Carla is with her, so I don't think they're lost. Want me to go look for her? Naruto suggested before he started counting 1, 2, 3, 4. You need a team of 5 to participate in the tournament, you know? Tick. Should have suggested that a bit sooner, Naruto muttered sarcastically as he looked at the clock. It's 12 o'clock. The church bell at a local church started to ring. What's going to happen? Lucy asked with a little nervousness in her tone. The whole city had become quiet and the only things that could be heard were the belt's tolls. To all the guilds here for the grand magic game. A loud and playful voice that could be heard all over the city hit them. Surprise Team Fairy Tale. They immediately ran outside to see what was happening. Above the city was the hologram of a short man wearing a pumpkin head with large eyes and mouth, striped shirt with white cuffs, a black shirt underneath, a dark cape with white edges and white underside, a pair of white pants, white boots, white gloves, and a dark witch-like hat. Good morning. Whoa! Natsu gasped in amazement. He's massive. Show off, Naruto said as he leant against the balcony.
In order to reduce the participating teams from 113 down to 8. The pumpkin said, we will now begin a preliminary event.
Preliminary? Gray cried out in shock, no one said anything about this.
Every year, more and more come to participate in this event.
Unfortunately, that's a sign this event was starting to be taken too lightly.
Pumpkin started to dance around and said with a sing-song tone, this year, we brought the number of final competing teams down to 8. He then pointed his index finger up and the whole city starting to move, shocking everyone. Every single lodge for the participants starting to rise up from the ground. You will all now compete with each other.
The goal is the event's ground, Domus Flow.
The first 8 teams to make it will participate in the event. Your lodging will be the starting line for the preliminary. After that, paths started being created on the balcony of the lodges all around the capital of Fiori and all connected to the place where the preliminaries would take place, a massive structure floating in the sky. Feel free to use any magic you like, because there are no restrictions as long as you can be one of the first 8 teams to make it. But if all 5 members of your team don't make it there, you still lose. And, one more thing, Pumpkin said with a dark chuckle, we take no responsibility for anyone who loses their life in the labyrinth. Pumpkin cried and the whole city lighted up with flashlights. The Grand Magic Games preliminary event,
Sky Labyrinth, has begun.
Oh no, we don't have enough members, Lucy exclaimed in horror as she looked at her team.
Where the hell is Wendy?
Gray gritted his teeth, asking in both frustration and worry.
We're not going to make it like this,
Urza could only say while her mind was racing with thoughts.
Why, you look at that,
Naruto said simply as he turned his head around, looking at the other teams that were already heading to the Sky Labyrinth on their respective paths. You guys better get going, or else you're not going to make. He then stopped and turned his head to the side to look at Urza, who was looking at him hopefully. Why are you looking at me like that? It didn't take him long to realize her intention. No, absolutely not.
We have no choice.
Urza shook her head before saying, Naruto, we need 5 members to participate. You have to join us, or Fairy Tail is going to lose. The others widened their eyes and started looking at Naruto the same way.
I have already told you multiple times. Count me out of this mess,
he said, holding up both of his hands. I can find Wendy for you.
It will only take a second.
But before he could go anywhere, Urza grabbed the sleeve of his shirt, stopping him. Wendy can join later, each team can have 1 reserve member. The whole team nodded in agreement.
How about I bring Juvia here? Naruto suggested. How about Levi? They are here to cheer for the team, aren't they? Are we really having this conversation?
Natsu asked as he pointed his hand at the others have already gotten into the Sky Labyrinth.
You said you didn't want to participate because it was going to waste your time?
Guess what? You are wasting our time here. He growled, poking Naruto's chest with each word he said. Forget it, guys.
He turned around and jumped onto the platform. Happy as a member of Fairy Tail, right? He can be a member of our team too.
Let's take off before any other team can take our place.
Happy said and flew after Natsu. Wait for me, Lucy cried and quickly ran after the Dragon Slayer and the cat with Gray.
Urza jumped onto the balcony and followed her teammate, but before she did it, she turned her head around and gave Naruto a glare.
What? Naruto asked awkwardly.
He didn't need his ability to tell what Urza was feeling, because the moment he looked into her eyes, he could see hurt, anger, and most of all, disappointment. It was the first time she had looked at him like that. Even when he told Urza her precious teacher was an asshole, even when he pushed her through hellish training to make her stronger, she didn't look at him with those eyes. It nearly made him flinch in surprise. Urza left with her team after that, leaving him behind all by himself.
What's that all about?
Naruto pondered as he turned around and made his way back into the lodging.
He was alone now. Alone. Which would only lead to the feeling of loneliness.
Thinking about them, for the first time in a very long time, he started to hate those feelings, again. It was strange, because Naruto thought he had gotten used to those feelings by now. And the way Erza had looked at him, full of disappointment, made him disappoint in himself.
God fucking damn it. Naruto cursed as he punched the wall of Honeybone, causing the entire building to shake violently. Fuck.
He yelled and turned around, running as fast as he could while constantly cursing as loud as he could in hope of releasing his frustration. Fuck. Naruto became a blur as he jumped onto the path that connected Honeybone to the Sky Labyrinth. It didn't take him long to catch up to Team Natsu, and when he did, he grabbed all four of them, much to their surprise.
Naruto? Lucy asked in surprise. The hell, man, slow down. Natsu cried as he felt ill.
He and Gray were being held in Naruto's arms, while Erza and Lucy, who immediately wrapped their arms around Naruto's neck, trying to hang on for dear life when he threw them onto his shoulders.
I swear, Natsu, if you throw up on me and ruin my clothes, I am going to fucking rip your balls off, you got that?
Natsu immediately slapped his hands over his mouth, trying his best to keep his dinner in his stomach.
Cat. Naruto looked at Happy, who, even with max speed, was finding it hard to keep up with him. Go find Wendy and your girlfriend, I will take it from here. Happy yelled his catchphrase excitedly before flying away. What are you doing, Naruto? Erza asked as she looked at him with her eyes widening in surprise. It's sensei for you, girl. He yelled over the wind, and also, why the fuck did this fucker choose a fucking cat to take the freaking position when I fucking refused it? The number of curses in a single question was enough for them to know how frustrated he was at the moment. A cat? A freaking cat. You think that a cat is fucking as good as I do? I say fuck it. I will take the position and join your team. Happy now?
You know, your reasons make absolutely no sense.
Gray chuckled nervously. You have problems with cats, pal? You all owe me big time, got it?
He growled, and three of them nodded their head, one weaker than the other two.
Thank you, Naruto. Erza smiled softly as she tightened her arms around his neck. It's sensei for you. Don't worry, just this time.
This place is so confusing. Lucy hollered while doing her best not to fall from the hover platform she was standing on. Her blonde hair swished side to side as she turned her head around, searching for the right decision.
They had gotten the labyrinth and were currently finding their way to the arena.
Naruto, who had calmed down and regained his composure, was standing on a higher ground, a massive pillar 20 feet higher than where the other were standing, and scouting around the area with his eyes.
We have to head east, Erza instructed. Lucy grinned. I've got this. She pulled out a silver key and waved it above her head. Open.
Gate of the compass, Pixis. In a brilliant flash of light, a small penguin-like creature with a compass on its head appeared, flapping its tiny wings.
All right, Pixis, Lucy said, bending down. Which way is east?
After a few spins of the compass, Pixis squawked a cheer and pointed.
The squad followed his gaze and saw platforms upon platforms of difficult climbing.
Actually, Erza mentioned, I have a compass right here. The Queen of the Fairies held up a small silver circle with a red and white needle in the center. This made the celestial mage smile dropped and had to call back Pixis.
We should get moving, I saw some fights ahead of us.
Naruto pointed out, try to avoid battles as much as possible since we don't want to waste any more time than before. The others nodded their head in agreement. The labyrinth was indeed not making it easy for the fairy tale team, even with Naruto's help and Erza's compass. Gray continuously made stairs of ice for everyone to climb, and at several points, in time they came across other guilds.
Even if they tried to, conflicts were unavoidable.
The group attempted to make a map, and 3 out of the 5 members were very keen on the idea of stealing maps from other groups.
But once the maze began to shift, Naruto knew immediately the maps were useless. It's moving!
Lucy howled and fell off the platform. Natsu immediately went after his friend and grabbed her before she could fall, but he too fell off the platform when it shifted once again. Natsu tried to hold on, but the platform twisted around again, this time vertically, and hurled his hand away.
Both Salamander and Celestial Mage gasped in shock as they started falling.
Fortunately for them, Naruto appeared in a blur and grabbed Natsu's wrist, saving both of them.
There you go. Naruto smirked and pulled Natsu and Lucy up.
His chakra allowed him to stick his feet to the platform no matter what angle it was in. Be more careful. The two breathed out a sigh of relief and nodded their head. Man, I wish Happy is here, he can take us to the Domus Flow for sure.
You said it yourself, Natsu.
Happy is a member of Fairy Tail and is considered a member of the team, so he cannot come here.
Naruto then suggested, much to Natsu's dismay, I can just grab you and take you all there in a few seconds, you know. Hell no man, I nearly threw up back there.
Natsu immediately crossed his arms in front of him.
Suit yourself. Whoa!
Urza started sliding backwards off her platform and their last member, Gray, was having enough troubles holding onto his own platform. This place is a mess, was his comment before he was helped up to his feet. After a few minutes of traveling, Team Fairy Tail encountered a group of men with very familiar guild mark.
Twilight Ogre. Lucy gasped.
A man, who appeared to be their leader, said as his lip curved up.
Fairy Tail. You really think you have a chance, Dash?
He never finished his sentence. I don't have time for this, Naruto called, leaping forward with his feet put together in a dropkick, which then connected with the man's face and sent him away. The remaining four members growled and gripped their weapons tightly, but they were met with an ice cannonball shot with high speed and Natsu's flaming fist to the heads. After they had dealt with the rest of the ogres, it didn't take it long for them to find a long path that led to a huge door. Encouraged by the prospect that they were close, the whole team ran faster. It didn't take them long to reach the exit, where Matto the pumpkin stood waiting for them.
Well, that was easy.
Natsu grinned as the team stood in front of Matto, who was clapping his hands rapidly to congratulate them for passing the preliminary. So how did we do it?
Gray asked quickly. We were first, right?
Matto rubbed his palms together nervously.
Not exactly. The anticipated win that the Fairy Tail team expected did not come.
You got the fourth place.
This made Fairy Tail's hopeful smile dropped. Well, at least we didn't make it last.
Naruto said before asking, I take that we also aren't allowed to know who passed this before us, right?
Yes, you'll know about the others tomorrow morning.
He smiled, nodding his head in response. Now, come along, come along. He ushered everyone in through the gateway. You all deserve a good night rest. Around 7 o'clock in the next morning, it was the moment they had been waiting for. The citizens of Crocus were gathering together inside the Domus Flow, excited for the upcoming event.
The annual Magic Festival finally starts. The Grand Magic Tournament. And the crowds went wild as the declaration, waiting eagerly for the revelation of the teams that had made it through the preliminary round. I'm Chapati Lola here. I'll be covering today's events. He introduced himself. Chapati was a middle-aged short man, thin and pale-skinned. His smooth face was rather unusual, square and very big when compared to his small eyes, thin eyebrows, nose, mouth and chin, all close together and located in the middle of the face. For attire, he wears a simple dark suit with a light shirt under it, dark pants and a tie, where it reads Grand Magic Games. We are honored to have Uzima-san, a former member of the Magic Council, as our commentator. It's a thrill to have you here, Uzima-san. The old man gave a nod of acknowledgement. The pleasure's mine, replied Uzima, and Chapati continued the introductions of the special guests of the day. For day one's guest, we're privileged to have Miss Fiore, Jenny Raylight from Blue Pegasus. Loud exclamations were heard and many cheers from fans could also be heard as she made her comment. We're gonna win this year, Jenny stated with full confidence. Inside, 4 out of 5 members of Team Fairy Tail were dressed in purple and white uniforms, but with different designs. Urza was a dress split open in the front, revealing midriff and short shorts. Lucy had a white skirt and purple top. Natsu's had one with long sleeve, covering his left arm but left his right arm exposed. Gray, however, wasn't even wearing his shirt at all. They were all waiting for their name to be called. Naruto, meanwhile, kept his clothes and had no intention of changing them.
Wendy, their reserve member, was currently resting inside their infirmary. Happy found her unconscious on the street last night, attacked by what she claimed to be a small, black creature, which Naruto had a feeling that Scylla would know what it was. She had lost a lot of magical power, which caused her physical strength to suffer greatly, but with poorly Yusuke's help, she should be able to have a swift recovery.
Okay, contestants are arriving.
First team ranks the 8th in the preliminary event.
Let's welcome them.
The Hounds of Hell's Army, Quarto Cerberus.
Wild.
And some of them flex to show off some muscles.
The 7th place is a female guild. Dancers of the Ocean. Mermaid Heel.
Some of their members waved or blew kisses while the leader looked nonchalant. They are a new guild, Lucy informed them. With only one S-class mage, I didn't know that they could make it through the preliminary as well. Coming up, the 6th place is the Wings That Sparkle in the Dark, Blue Pegasus.
Kia. Eve Kun. Ibiki-sama. Run. Run.
Many girls yelled as they all posed in their famous handsome men pose. However, Ichiya and the person who was in bunny costume weren't making a very good impression. The 5th place, Goddess of Love and War, Sacred Destroyers. Lania Scale. Lania Scale, led by Lion, made their entrance.
5th place?
Were you guys holding back, you idiots? Their elderly guild leader raged as she watched from the sidelines. Alright everyone, despite the fact they always got the last place over the past few years, they managed to make an incredible return this year, claiming the 4th rank this year. Let's welcome, the wild and rowdy, Team Fairy Tail.
Naruto took the lead and walked out of their entrance.
The crowd was booing at them. Unlike his team, Naruto paid no mind to them and continued to make his way to the center of the stadium with his hands in his pockets. Yazima, who saw this, gave a thumb up to them.
This is wonderful. Congrats, Fairy Tail.
Hooray, hooray.
Fairy Tail.
The whole guild yelled from the sidelines as they cheered with big signs and everything.
Isn't that?
Gray pointed to spot beside their master.
Hooray, hooray, Fairy Tail.
She cheered and punched a fist into the air as her legs swung in the air. Go Naruto.
Master Mavis?
The whole guild yelled in surprise as their eyes bugged from their sockets. Mavis had on a perfectly confident face as she smiled. I'm here to cheer for you. Nobody can see me unless they're Fairy Tail, so don't worry about that.
Is that so?
He said nervously.
Who informed her?
Naruto growled, pointing his hand at Mavis, who was still acting as innocent as ever. It's a relief to see the first come here to cheer on us, said Natsu as Gray nodded in agreement with him.
Even if she is a spirit, Lucy added.
The announcer continued. The 3rd place. Wow, for a first-time guild to get such a high rank, let's welcome the Midnight Raiders.
Raven Tail. Raven Tail?
Natsu yelled out in shock.
This is the guild founded by Master's son, Ivan.
Urza explained to Lucy, who nodded.
But
I think it's... She trailed off and Makarov finished the sentence for her.
A dark guild. Makarov looked furious. Is it okay to let them participate?
He raged as they all tried to hold him back, while Mavis noted thoughtfully.
I do feel a malicious force.
She nodded her head.
Isn't it a dark guild? Someone in the crowd whispered worriedly and the announcers started explaining it.
Well, according to official records, Raventail has existed for more than 7 years, and has been approved as an official guild recently.
So, it's not a dark guild since it has been approved by the Guild League. Yazima finished the announcement for him.
Hearing this, Makarov was pissed beyond words with veins throbbing violently on his forehead.
Ivan, what the hell are you planning? How did you make it?
The man in question, who was sitting at the back of the crowd, smirked evilly. I've waited in patience for so long, father.
All for this day to come. And in next place, oh, my. Can the broken wings of the fairies be mended and allow them to take the skies once again? Let's welcome Fairy Tail B team. His declaration led the crowd into stunned silence. Wah! Was the only thing that left Fairy Tail's team, now a team, as they stared at their friends, who had formed a team of their own. Wait! They all exclaimed in absolute shock. Even Naruto was surprised by this sudden turn of event. Mira? Gajeel? Juvia? Laxus? What is with that haircut? Another team from Fairy Tail. The crowd whispered among themselves, confused at the fact that they had two teams participated in the tournament. Why is Mystic in here? Urza stared at him before she decided to ask. Are you saying you are Jalal? He quickly put a finger to his lips, signaling for her to keep her voice down, as many members of the Magic Council were watching. It's really you? Or not? Gray and Natsu yelled at the same time. What a surprise! Naruto said as he looked at Mira, who looked as beautiful and radiant as ever. I didn't know that you guys could make it here, and have such a flashy entrance too. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Mira giggled. You joined Team Natsu? What a surprise, Naruto-kun. Unfortunately. He shrugged. You heard about Wendy? Mira immediately stopped giggling and nodded her head grimly. Well, they didn't have enough member to participate. Since I'm a very generous person, I decided to lend them a hand. He joked, trying to light up her spirit. You know, forming this team is actually Master's idea. We want to have a team with the strongest members. Mira smiled, changing the topic. We wanted to have you as our team's reserve, but couldn't find you anywhere, so we have to ask Juvia and Mystigan over there instead. She pointed her hand to the masked man. Before turning, she turned her attention back to him. You guys made it to the 4th place, not too bad. Mira said, but he could that she was teasing him. Don't get ahead of yourself. Naruto smirked. I don't know about the matchups, but we might have to fight each other in a battle, and for your information, we might thrash you, you know. Mira then glanced around. Natsu was facing Gajeel in a glaring contest. Juvia was trying to hug Gray. Urza was talking with Jalal and clearly wasn't happy with him here. Lucy, meanwhile, was terrifying when she was left with Laxus, who was looking at the place his father was sitting. Well, it seemed the two of us is paired with each other now. Hate to face you in a real battle, Naruto-kun. Don't worry. Naruto said lazily, I won't hurt you much anyway. Mira pouted before noticing the forehead protector on Naruto's forehead, but still, been looking forward to another fight with you, if you know what I mean. The white-haired demon laughed excitedly at the idea. Doing that in front this crowd? No thank you. Even my demon self isn't that naughty. She then glanced to Urza for a second before asking, so, have you? But before Mira could ask her question, the announcer continued his team introduction after he had finished explaining to the crowd why Fairy Tail was allowed to have one more team. Alright. For the last team that made it through the preliminary round. The crowd began to get wild. That's right, you all know who they are. The strongest. The invincible. The complete dominators. Sabretooth. Team Sabretooth, led by Sting, one of the twin dragon slayer of the currently strongest guild of Fairy Tail, appeared in the booming welcome of the spectators. Everyone was cheering out for them, as expected from the number 1 guild of Fairy Tail. Here they come. Natsu hardened his eyes as he eyed their strongest opponents. Looking forward to you, Natsu-san. Sting waved his index finger to the pink-haired fire dragon slayer. Don't wave that finger at me, you bastard, Gajeel muttered darkly. Gajeel, Rouge said, keeping a calm expression on his face. Over there is Fiore's strongest guild. Gray nodded his head. Alright. Thank you all for waiting, here is your lineup. A stone board shot up from the ground. The Grand Magic Games had been unveiled. The crowd started to cheer again as Chapati started explaining the rule. The tournament would be divided into 5 days, with 2 events held each day, 1 battle and 1 hidden event. For the hidden event, each team will receive an amount of points based on their position in the end of it. For the battles, the winning team was going to get 10 points and the loser wasn't going to get any at all. If the fight ended up in a draw,
both teams got 5 points for themselves. The battles would be decided by the organizers based on the fans' votes.
However, some battles are arranged according to the Fiori King's desires and would be set up like so. Team A versus Team B. Team C versus Team D. Team E versus Team F. Team G versus Team H. Without further ado, I bring you the Grand Magic Game opening game. Chapati cried, "Let's begin, Hidden."
He then lowered his voice so it wasn't as loud as before. Each team will have one participant. After each team submits their player, I'll explain the rules. Quarto Cerberus sent out Jaeger, while Mermaid Heel had a girl whose hair tied into 2 ponytails behind her, Beth, participated in the first competition. Raventail had Narpudding on the go and Rin represented Blue Pegasus. The one who nicknamed the singing bard of the Red Moon, Rufus, removed his hat and greeted the excited crowd with a smile on his face.
If small is better, then maybe Yuka or I should go? Shalia suggested, looking at her thick eyebrows teammate.
No, we should grab this from the very start. Lion shook his head and put on a confident smile. I'll go.
Yeah, in that case, Gray stepped forward, looking at Lion. I'll go too.
However, before he could make one more step, Naruto surprised everyone when he suddenly grabbed Gray by the top of his head and pulled him back to step ahead.
No.
This game's name is Hidden, so it's all about stealth. Strategically speaking, someone has the best sneaking skills should participate. Naruto explained to the team before turning around and looked at Urza. Urza, you handle this.
Lucy, Natsu and Gray asked in surprise.
Even the other members of Fairy Tail were surprised by his decision.
Sending Urza out right off the bat?
Makarov asked, tilting his head to the side as he crossed his arms on his chest. And also, while she is one of the strongest, is she the most suitable for this event? Everyone understood that the members of Team Natsu were destructive in nature, and they tended to fight the enemy's head on instead of stealthily sneaking behind them. Well, Naruto is the best in this, but I trust his decision.
Mavis smiled with a nod of her head. Let's just wait and see.
It seems they're not going to change their decision, Laxus concluded after observing Team Natsu. He then turned to Juvia, who he believed to be the most suitable member of the team to fight in the game. She had the least destructive power among them, and also the shortest member of the team. Juvia, can you go first?
I can.
Juvia nodded her head rather nervously. She had fought Urza once before, and it didn't end well for her because Urza had weapons to deal with her water body, which was physical attacks resistance. Don't lose, even if your opponent is Urza, Gadjil said, patting his friend on the shoulder.
I will.
Are you sure, Sensei? Urza asked, looking rather nervous.
Sure. Naruto nodded. Consider this a test. Whatever you are going to out here, do not get yourself detected, got it?
Got it.
Urza nodded her head and stepped forward, joining the other competitors.
The other teams had already left the field, leaving only the ones who were going to fight in the first game behind. Most members of Fairy Tail's Team A had done the same, but Naruto was still standing in the same place, looking at Urza, who was talking to Juvia. Naruto, let's go, Natsu called, looking back at the blonde.
Hold on a second.
The blonde replied back just as loudly, before calling for Urza. Urza, come here.
Yes?
Urza asked as she walked toward him. What am I thinking? I cannot let you fight without this. He reached his hands into his pockets, searching for a specific item.
Just how many things do you have in those pockets?
Urza asked in disbelief. A lot. He answered simply, they are everything that is important. While I can use Requip to store them, I want to keep them as close to me as possible.
Ah, there we go.
He smiled and took out a headband composed of a metal plate and a black band of cloth. There was a swirl symbol that greatly resembled that of a leaf with a long, horizontal scratch across the symbol.
What is this?
Urza asked curiously.
It's a forehead protector.
Naruto answered with a smile. While you've been trained in our arts, it doesn't officially make you a ninja, or a kunoichi to be specific. He held the metal plate. Forehead protector is one of the most important parts of our tradition, the proof of one's worthiness to the name of ninja. He stated softly before bringing it forward, holding the headband by its metal plate.
Then, does that mean? Urza gasped in shock.
This headband belonged to the most important people in my life, and now, it belongs to you. Naruto smiled congratulation because, from this day, you are officially a kunoichi. A huge smile spread out on Urza's face, and she almost squealed out like a schoolgirl because of his declaration but stopped herself at the last moment so she wouldn't make a fool out of herself in front of everyone. Thank you, she stuttered, putting her hand on the metal plate and gripping it tightly in her hand before Urza replaced her current armor with kunoichi armor. She accepted the forehead protector from him when he loosened his grip on it. It was called forehead protector, so she had a basic idea of where she should wear it. Wear it with pride, Urza, like everyone before you did. Naruto said as he watched Urza putting on her forehead protector. My father would be proud.
He would be proud.
Of course, he does.
Urza smiled as she tied the cloth into a knot at the back of her head. What about you?
Me? Naruto chuckled. Well, a little bit of this and that, but becoming a kunoichi doesn't mean that you can skip your daily training with me.
Got it? Urza pouted, and he laughed anyway. Good luck out there. And don't worry about your performance. Show them hell. Thank you, Naruto-sensei. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction. Looking forward to having you on board again.